Hi folks, I'm Edul Patel. I'm the founder and CEO of Mudrex. We are India's largest crypto investing platform.
Let me first get a little bit of a backstory before we understand what is Mudrex. What led you to becoming an entrepreneur? Just take me through that journey.
Got it. So the first company that I started was actually in college in my
Wow.
third year summers. And I can give you guys a bit
And
of
this is IT
background as
Bombay.
to what I was doing. Yeah, this is IT Bombay. So I joined IT Bombay in 2016. And while at IT Bombay, um, so I can tell you the story, right? So when I joined IIT Bombay, I was ranked 2543. So 2543 at that rank, I was the last engineer to get entry into IIT Bombay, right? And I
Okay.
always wanted to do engineering, physics, always wanted to do aerospace,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. Right? I didn't think metallurgy was a field that I wanted to pursue things in. However, having said that, over time those perceptions have changed. But when I joined IIT Bombay, the first semester was कि यार बहुत मेहनत करेंगे, बहुत पढ़ेंगे, and बहुत अच्छी रैंक लेके आएंगे एंड ब्रांच चेंज करेंगे, ठीक है? तो बहुत मेहनत की, बहुत पढ़े, एंड 8.53 कुछ सीपीआई आया. 8.53 आया तो रियलाइज हो गया इस पे ब्रांच चेंज नहीं होने वाला है. तो सेकंड सेमेस्टर बिल्कुल नहीं पढ़ा, बहुत मस्ती करी, सब दोस्तों के साथ टाइम स्पेंड किया, तब भी 8.54 सीपीआई आया. तो रियलाइज हुआ कि दिस इज नॉट like it's less dependent on the input that I give, but more dependent
Yeah.
on a wide variety of other factors. And anyways, irrespective of the intent, I will continue to do what I want to. And historically also, even prior to this, when I was in school, when I was in 11th 12th, I was always this kind of a person कि यार okay, first आना जरूरी नहीं है, but you should be in the top few folks in the college, but at the same time try and do a bunch of other things as well, and try and pursue a lot of other interests, which is basically what I started to do again when I was in IIT. Ki started pursuing a wide variety of other interests. So although aerospace करना था, but aerospace कर नहीं पाए तो क्या हुआ? मतलब I joined the astronomy and satellite club of IIT Bombay, where we were designing our student satellite. I joined the mechanical engineering club, and we were designing the first F1 car from IIT Bombay, and I was taking care of the steering and brakes of that system. I was a part of the robotics club, and so on and so forth. Right. So continue to pursue a lot of these wide variety of things in and around, and focus on making sure my network and my learning and my growth in college was maximized instead of just trying to maximize for CPI and CGPA. As an outcome of that, I think created a wide variety of friends and a huge network, which I think in hindsight has probably been the most valuable thing that I got out of IITB, including the experiences that I got at IITB of building my first company over there. So coming back to the original question that you asked, so I was a manager at this event called as TechFest. TechFest is Asia's largest technology student festival that we would organize, and I was a part of that, the core organizing committee. And as a part of that core organizing committee, we had launched a innovation kind of sort of competition where people would come and do demos. In that competition, there was one particular person who we met, who was trying to productize glow in the dark paints. It's a very interesting thing. Okay, so he was making glow in the dark paints, and this is the same paint that's there in your watches, through which you can see the watch car dials when it's night, right? So we then started working with him to figure out how we can convert that into tiles, and then figure out how do we sell those tiles in, let's say, parking lots or to the government for just better road safety and so on and so forth. So that was our first startup. We got incubated by Sign, which is the incubation network inside of IT Bombay. Got some funds from the government. Spent 4 or 5 months working on it, and eventually realized that things weren't working out simply because we were not the right team for it. So it was me, a very close friend of mine, and this third person from outside ITB, and things weren't just gelling well. So got the I think our my most important lesson of building companies, which is that you need to get the team right in the first three members of the first startup that I started. So
Amazing,
that's the
amazing.
backstory.
That's a good learning to have in your first startup. And I mean,
Yeah.
definitely to have learned this then later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And somehow it's just these learnings keep on repeating again and again and again. It's just that the flavors change, and then you realize what works and what doesn't work. So, anyways, graduated from IIT Bombay 2011. Then went to Deutsche Bank, worked at Deutsche for a couple of years. Deutsche was kind of sort of the dream job that people would want to get to out of ITB. It's an investment bank and it's a coveted role. So spent a couple of years at Deutsche, learned a lot about finance. Coincidentally, bought my first Bitcoin also when I was at Deutsche. But after doing 2-3 years of that, realized that I wasn't really happy doing that job. The money was good, the opportunities were great. I had an option to shift to New York and work at Deutsche at the core. And at that point in time, Deutsche was the world's largest broker. So this was, we're talking about 2012, 2013, before Deutsche got slapped with all the fines.
What do you mean broker? Like a equity broker?
No, FX broker. So
okay.
FX is the world's largest market, and Deutsche is the world's largest broker of FX for, I think, 10 years in a row when I was at Deutsche. And I was a part of the risk team at Deutsche who would manage risk for our internal clients doing FX trading. So all of this was very large and very, very valuable. So yeah, got a lot of learnings from that journey. But I think the main learning that I got from that journey was that Deutsche wasn't for me. It wasn't a role where I found meaning and where I found happiness. Of course, I found money over there, but that wasn't the motivator. That stops being the motivator after a point, right? कितना ही party कर लोगे, कितना ही दारू पी लोगे. Then you need to move on and do more meaningful things in life. So left Deutsche in 2013 to pursue an idea that I had in college again. So in college, when we were in college in 2010, 2011, Freecharge, and there were a lot of these companies that were very popular that would give out coupons if you do recharge. I don't even know if your audience would remember this, but it was all in the rage where every student would sign up on Freecharge, do their recharges, and get those Domino's ke coupons. They basically didn't do anything with it, but maza aata tha, right? So rewards was a very interesting problem. And at that time, there was an idea that, okay, what is it? Was there a way that you could offer the same kind of distribution to local stores instead of just online merchants? So we wanted to build a free charge, but for offline stores, Groupon for India, for all practical purposes, at a time before Groupon existed. So that company we started off after when I left Deutsche 2013 with three of my friends.
A wave of Groupon clones in India. No, Snapdeal also started that time.
No, this was so Snapdeal was a very different proposition by then.
But
I think
their original proposition was Groupon type only, right? Like that's how they group.
Snapdeal was doing group buying, but for online products. Groupon was an offline product. So it was, Snapdeal was for all practical purposes an auctioning platform. It was like a combination of Amazon and eBay and a bunch of those companies together. And then they pivoted, and they also had a free charge model, and then they pivoted to just e-commerce once e-commerce started. It was a very interesting time. 2013 was, I think, the first time when smartphones became good enough for people to start using Google Maps. Ola and Uber had just started. Like, I remember this clearly very well because the first website of Ola, and again, I don't think people know this, but Ola was actually an outstation travel company, like Savari and the lookalikes. And the first website of Ola was designed on my laptop by my wingmate, who was a temporary designer at Ola when Bhavesh and the gang were living in Powai, just outside of IIT Bombay. It's an IIT Bombay small network, right? So yeah, this was 2013 was a time when smartphones weren't there. People didn't know most of the things like this would exist. Ola and Uber didn't even existed. This was a time where Zomato was still a menu scanning company and not the delivery behemoth we know it today. Swiggy did not exist. Tiny Owl was the largest home delivery company, right? This is that era. So 2013 started Niffler. The goal was to connect local stores more closely with their own audiences, create like a hyper-local distribution for these local stores, build that company out for a couple of years, raise $1 million from SAF partners, which was quite a bit.
What was the business model there? You were charging local merchants to distribute their coupons, and on the one side, and on the other side, it was a recharge platform for mobile phones. And
no. It was nothing like that. It was nothing like that at all. So I'll tell you how that product also evolved, right? So the first version was like a Pinterest for local stores, people will go and people will take photos of products that are amazing. Like basically what every single store does on Instagram today. That's what we wanted to do. But Instagram didn't exist then. So we thought, okay, people will go in, they will take photos, they will create their own network and distribute it. Got our first 2,000-3,000 users.
Sounds like early Magic Pen also. That was some.
Yeah. So there is a separate story about Magic Pen that we will get to maybe off the record at some point. But
okay.
Yeah.
But piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, so this was that era. So Instagram didn't exist. The closest there were two apps. One was called as Path, and the other was called as Pinterest, that were popular at that point. So the idea was that people would go to local stores, take photos of things they like, and the thought process was to generate that word of mouth, right? Because the realization was that word of mouth is the biggest driver of user acquisition for any local store. Your friends need to know about it, and this was like a thought. The thought process: okay, you go to a store, you love what you're eating, you take a photo, you share it to your network. When you share it to your network, you get some loyalty points. And then you can use those loyalty points across the conglomerate of stores that we had, right? So launched the product, got like our first 2,000-3,000 users very well. And users were using it for sharing photos, but then they were like, okay, photo share kar liya, ab kya kare? Points मिलने में तो बहुत time लगता है. So there was no engagement. So realized that one of the best ways to engage is, okay, users are coming in now, why don't we give something to the store owner? And what will the store owner do? The store owner will start pushing out rewards. So when we started doing that, the most engagement that we were getting was on offers, deals, and discounts that a store owner would push to the audience. And then we realized that, that was like the epiphany, an aha moment. Okay, store owners, users actually want to know where are the local stores that are in sale, when is the sale going on? Because again, this is still a problem. If today you want to know which H&M outlet near you has a discount or an offer running, you actually really don't know it. It's a very hard problem to solve locally, simply because aggregating real-time local information rapidly again was difficult. So I said, okay, this seems like a doable thing, but of course every store owner is aligned. तो हमने सोचा कि स्टोर ओनर अलाइन है तो क्या हमारी एक डेटा कलेक्शन फ्लीट बनाते हैं जो हर मॉल में जाएगी, हर मॉल में जाके दे विल कलेक्ट information around which offers are going on, and then we will create a database of store owners, and then we will just call them and ask them कि आप क्या कोई offer चल रहा है कि नहीं चल रहा है, right? So that's when we pivoted to that. When we pivoted to that, the store owners loved the fact that we were able to drive users to their stores, but there was an attribution problem. Store owners were saying कि हमें क्या पता कि तुम्हारे through आया है, right? Like how do you close the loop, which is again still a problem. It is a very hard problem to solve locally.
That's why I pivoted away from the original.
Correct. So to solve for that, we actually created a hardware device. It was a small audio box, an audio box that would emit an ultrasound frequency that you would not be able to hear, but your phone would be able to hear. We innovated a lot on geolocation. The entire system that, let's say, Ola uses to identify that you're at the airport. Like no one was doing this at that point, right? And this is what we were doing. And with the combination of that audio box and the geolocation tech, we were able to pinpoint that a user was inside a store up to 3 meters of accuracy. So we actually did a very interesting pilot with Jack & Jones. And Jack & Jones at that point had just launched in Bombay. I still remember this very well. They had a huge store, a three-story store. And there's a lot of complications, right? From a location identification perspective, height has a lot of complications. Like you would know this if you take a flyover and Google Maps will tell you that you're niche not upar, right? So it's a very hard problem to solve. It's a very basic problem, but a very hard problem to solve. So coupled with geolocation and our proprietary hardware technology, we would be able to tell people exactly where they were. So Jack & Jones did this pilot with us where, let's say, if you were standing in front of a jeans section, and with our system, you would be able to know that you're in front of jeans or you're in front of t-shirts or you're in front of, let's say, women's or men's or whatever. They would be able to push out a very specific notification to you on your phone saying that, okay, this is a very special jeans, that's on discount. You probably like it. Why don't you buy it? Stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Having said that, all of this was just way too early and it was just not the right time.
And this fundraise, your 1 million fundraise from, you said from Elevation.
Safe Partners is now Elevation.
Safe, Safe. Okay.
Yeah.
This happened before the pivot, after the pivot. When did that happen?
I should tell people who are listening to this that pivot is a part of running your business. So I don't put a pinpoint on it happened before, it happened after, because there are pivots that are always in the progress. So it's really hard to tell the difference. But yeah, so built out that business, and the offers business continued to do great. Interestingly, what happened is that because we had a lot of this proprietary info, there were a lot of people who were willing to partner with us to get this info. This data was really valuable. And one such partner was a company called as HelpChat. So HelpChat was this large company that was growing out of India at that point, had raised $18 million from Sequoia, was aiming to become like the WeChat for India, solve all problems of every single user on chat. And again, like as we know today, every single consumer in India, of course, wants rewards. So the one problem that they wanted to do is they wanted to solve for offers. And they said that, okay, why don't we do it? We'll take your proprietary data. We'll give you a dashboard. Every user that chats, every user that requests chats from us for offers, why don't you supply offers to us? So we did like a partnership integration with HelpChat. Eventually, we realized that there are actually a lot more synergies. They were offering us distribution, but we also had our own users, so we also had distribution for their product. We were very strong in Bombay and Pune. They were very strong in Delhi and Bangalore. So we realized that actually what would make sense was to solve this problem in a group. And the first problem, the first learning from the first company, that team is all that matters, that actually really resonated because the team at HelpChat was really good. And we really loved working with them. So eventually, HelpChat ended up acquiring Niffler. Niffler was the name of my first company in 2015. That's when I moved to Bangalore, joined the HelpChat team full time. Started heading the products part over there.
And then HelpChat was renamed to Tapzo.
HelpChat was renamed to Tapzo, joined HelpChat, and we started off this ambitious quest of solving every problem on chat. Very quickly realized that most things should not be solved on chat. Because, because really, why would you want to try and solve for a food ordering on chat, right? Like, why the hell would you want to spend 15 minutes explaining to someone that you want a Domino's large deep dish pizza with some specific toppings on your own, right? So very quickly realized that chat actually sucks for most things. And that's actually also why I'm very, with that learning, I'm also very dubious as to how all of these chat GPT and so on and so forth products will scale. Because in reality, a chat interface really sucks for most things in life. Apart from some really complicated use cases where you really need a human to understand where you're coming from and understand what you're saying without saying and help you solve their problem, right? That's really the place where chat helps. But otherwise, chat just sucks. You should just move away from chat to just creating UI-based flows. So that's what I ended up doing over there. Very quickly came in, we realized that this won't work. So we started building a UI-based flow for recharge, food ordering, laundry, urban cab booking. And HelpChat, and HelpChat morphed into Tapzo. The reason why we actually changed the name was because there was no longer any chat in the app. Like it was still called HelpChat, but no one was doing any chats. Everything was just happening via some flows, and Tapzo was a generic enough name, and the thought process that we'll be an all-in-one app. The goal was still the same: be the WeChat for India, be an all-in-one app, be a super app, and that means that you do everything from shopping to mutual fund investment to cab booking through one app. So that's where the business model changed to. The business model for the company would be just a lead aggregator and a lead generation mechanism.
And does a super app work? And right now Tata is trying to figure that question out. Whether a super app works. No,
it doesn't. It doesn't. Because people don't perceive you. Because no one wants a super app. That's a short answer.
Okay. Everyone wants to go to a specific app for specific use case.
Correct. So the issue is that, see, you will never be good enough, or you will never become better than the person who is solving for that problem independently by themselves. Like, imagine this, right? When we were trying to build a unified experience of both Ola and Uber on our platform, we had to build every single feature that both Ola and Uber were booking and make it better than them and solve for the aggregation problem. So it's a order of magnitude harder problem, and it's hard to do unless you have some very clear distribution modes and then a lot of capital to solve for it. So it needs to start from 0 to 1. It needs to start by you owning and capturing distribution, and then somehow organically those problems being solved on your platform, not by you seeding it. So there is this very famous quote in complexity theory that says that any complex problem that starts to be solved without being solved from first simple problems never gets solved. This is like a genuine axiom inside of complexity theory, where you cannot solve complex things without first solving for simpler things and then building up on top, because it almost surely will lead to a suboptimal, more expensive solution. And that's what, in hindsight, Tabzo was. It was a suboptimal solution for a problem that probably did not exist. Like, seriously, what was the problem that we were trying to solve? The problem that we were trying to solve was a distribution problem. And the most important problem at that time was that phones did not have memory, and they could not afford to have many apps. So having one app with everything would solve for that problem. But that's basically betting against technology, right? You're betting against the fact that phones will not have modem.
Right.
And as a result, you only have a very small window of opportunity to capture a large enough market and offer an excellent enough service at a low enough cost with large enough discounts for a wide variety of services. Too many things to go right. In hindsight, we did end up building a great product. I think hands down one of the best teams that I've ever worked with. Learned a lot about the balance between execution and product sense and building a business over there, because at the end of the day, we have to build a business out, of course. Was very proud that we were able to scale that to many millions of users. And Tabzo eventually got acquired by Amazon. So it ended up being good for everyone. And whatever we built out over there ended up becoming Amazon Pay. And the seeds of what Amazon Pay is today was sown over there. So that journey still continues.
For a payment app, it still makes sense to have multiple things like bill payment and so on, or like what Paytm.
And basically, the Paytms and the Phone Pays of the world started doing all of these integrations because actually we started it first. This is a time when PhonePe and Paytm were very small. Like, I still remember having a conversation in my living room with a very close friend of mine who had got an offer from PhonePe to be their first 10 employees. Okay? In hindsight, we've laughed about this a lot now. But he got an offer from PhonePe to be one of their first 10 employees. So I think 2015, 2016, UPI did not exist or had just started. And at that point in time, PhonePe was a payments company, right? And no one makes money in payments. Like, no one made money in payments then, no one makes money in payments now. And as a result, I told him, यार payments को कौन जाता है, बहुत time waste होगा. It's a B2B business. तो कौन जाएगा phone पे, तू छोड़ दे, random company. Yeah, how things change. Right?
Fascinating.
Could not imagine that PhonePe would get acquired by Flipkart again, and Flipkart would give it distribution, and then that distribution would give PhonePe, and then we would have demonetization, which would blow up UPI, and then we would have UPI, which would be the best payment method in the world, and then that is what would let you to capture users.
Right. Yeah.
Amazing times. So did that at Tabzo. Tabzo got acquired by Amazon. I didn't want to go to Amazon. Like, the one thing I knew after my Deutsche experience.
You had equity in Tabzo, like when Tabzo acquired Niffler? Okay.
When Tabzo acquired Niffler, and let's say the outcome effectively net was that my opportunity cost was more than made up for. So it was a good outcome for everyone, for the investors, for the employees, for the founders.
Okay.
And of course, the entire experience and the journey learning was, of course, great. But nevertheless, never wanted to go to Amazon. I remembered my days at Deutsche and realized that nothing ever happened at Deutsche. Even less would happen at Amazon. So didn't want to join Amazon. Left Amazon and before already, of course, knew that this was going to happen. So I had already started thinking of kya karna hai and what will be my next steps. And this was in 2017. And in 2017, the thought process was that we felt that India was, of course, exploding and growing up. Having said that, financial independence and financial literacy was very poor. And the problem was there, and the problem still continues. It's not like things have changed. Things have become better, but not changed yet. And this is a problem not only for folks in India, but for a lot of folks around the world. We thought that half of this problem is because of lack of education, and we can't solve for education alone. It's an ecosystem problem that everyone will solve for. And the other half was that access to services do not exist in a cheap enough manner. And the reason why they don't exist in a cheap enough manner is because there are just, all information is just siloed. And you do not have access to information about a user's financial, holistic well-being in one place. And that's a problem that, let's say, an account aggregator system is not trying to solve for in India. But this problem still exists, right? And we realized that was fundamentally because how money was made, right? money in even today is not designed for the age of the internet. It is very private, very centralized, very siloed. Access to information is very restricted, and it's very difficult to get that information available in a secure, permissioned manner to a lot of people. And that's how somehow my first Bitcoin purchase of 2013 rekindled some thoughts at the back of my mind that, okay, actually Bitcoin is actually effectively trying to solve for all of these problems. And crypto is effectively trying to solve for all of these problems. There was also this recognition that we are maybe 20 years away from it being mainstream, but or the implementation or the application of the technology to be mainstream. But if you want to solve for this problem at the core, and you think that this is the pathway where the world is going to go to, and I genuinely did believe then and still do believe now, crypto will be mainstream and be a part of all of our lives because it's a fundamental technology efficiency problem that it solves for. Nothing else. Like everything else there are other factors to it, but the real reason why it works and makes sense is because it's a technology efficiency problem that it solves for. And history is the proof that if someone solves for efficiency, eventually everything moves there, because efficiency adds value, it reduces costs, improves margins, makes the world a better place for everyone. So
how is crypto solving those problems of money? You said money is not made for the digital age.
Let me try and break a couple of misnomers. Okay, everyone thinks that Bitcoin पे बहुत scam होते हैं कि अरे Bitcoin सब private है, once you transfer to someone the money is lost. Actually, Bitcoin is the most public ledger ever. Literally, it has something called as a public ledger. So once you know the identity of a wallet, you can actually literally track and trace every single transaction that has happened, right? So if someone gives you permissioned access to your wallet, you have the ability to understand what are the, let's say, the spending patterns of a user, which are the kind of things that people try and decrypt through, for example, SMSs or bank transactions and so on and so forth, right? It's extremely hard to do and it's almost inaccurate, right? But this is one kind of access that it gives. Let's move to, let's say, Ethereum. So Bitcoin is not designed for smart contracts and so on. It's designed to be just money and store of value. But something like an Ethereum does actually do a lot of the automation part as well. That, okay, if this happens, then do that. And automating a lot of that is half of the fraud problems in the world. Okay, someone sent money without some reason, without some knowledge, without some info, and then that money got lost somewhere in AML, or lost somewhere in terrorism financing, or lost somewhere in fraud. That's just someone did all someone else. So, and then that's just one part. Because the system does all of this in an automated way, you don't need the entire thick, hefty layer of regulators, banks, intermediaries, of customer support, success to solve for these problems of users, right? All of this can be pseudo-automated and be done. Again, I'm still not saying the technology is there. We're still maybe 3 to 5 years away now for the technology from being there, and 10 to 15 years away from the adoption from being there. As I said, I started 7 years ago thinking that it is 2 decades away. I'm kind of sort of still on track.
Okay, I understand these two are separate issues, adoption and technology. I was only looking at Bitcoin as a problem of adoption, but I was not aware that there is a technology problem also. What is the technology problem? Why is it like 5 years away?
Everything is expensive to do on the blockchain.
Okay.
It just takes too much. So you can everything is solvable, but it's just too expensive. For every transaction, you don't want to pay a $10 fee for a $1 transaction, right? You want to pay zero fees for a $1 transaction. And you want to enable an ecosystem that earns by itself by other means apart from just transaction fees. So we are very close to that. As I said, that problem is about 3 to 5 years away from being done. The fees used to be astronomical just about a year ago, but there have been a lot of innovation that's happened in the crypto space that has led to the fees being reduced, transaction times being reduced, transaction finality and assurance being there, and all of this happening in a decentralized manner at very, very low cost now. So we're getting there.
Okay. Can we take a slight digression and can you talk about the history of crypto? What was the original thesis and how has the technology evolved? So you said like the fees has become a lot lesser and it is more reliable, and what has been happening for these changes? Just for people who are not from the space, give them an understanding of the space. What all has been happening here?
So the seeds of crypto were sown in the 2008 financial crisis. Basically the thought process was that in 2008, a bunch of banks did a lot of shady business, and those banks almost led to the collapse of the global economy. And they could only be saved by the US government stepping in and basically giving them free money, which was over time has effectively, the cost of that free money has come to all of us individually in the form of inflation. That's effectively what has happened, right? Trillions and trillions of dollars of quantitative easing that has gone out to make sure that the financial system stays stable. The cost of that has been borne by individuals world over in the format of inflation, in the format of the cost of everyday goods becoming more expensive. Now, this did not sit well with a lot of pro-libertarian thinking folks in the US, and somehow some people got together, especially a few, to say that, okay, this system just sucks. Like, why should there be a government who's trying to bail out a few bad actors at the cost of everyone else in the longer run? If something has gone wrong, maybe the right thought process or a right financial system is a financial system that either discourages these actions, or if these actions happen, the people who did these actions bear the brunt and the rest of the world continues to grow, right? So Bitcoin was this experiment to create, for all practical purposes, a store of value. I wouldn't say currency because it's not a currency. There are the very clear things that currencies are supposed to do, and very clear things that things like gold and store of value are supposed to do. So the thought process of creating Bitcoin was to create a store of value that doesn't depreciate with time, that has no central bank deciding supply, and that has very clear rules, and those rules get followed for everyone. So those were the seeds of Bitcoin being put in. The development and the public release of Bitcoin followed through many years, from 2009 to 2011. 2012-13 is when it started to gain some traction in the
one question here. Blockchain as a technology existed before Bitcoin, or Bitcoin and blockchain are both they have a common origin point?
No, so actually, at the risk of not becoming too technical, blockchain, the technology, the idea that you could string these transactions together existed. How you can use that to solve for a problem of consensus was the part that Bitcoin solved for. So how do you couple blockchains with solving for the fact that I can have a public ledger and only legitimate transactions get added to that ledger, and anything added to that ledger does not go away over time, which is what is required for a store of value, or for a currency, or for a register of value to be there. Solving for that in a decentralized manner was a problem that Bitcoin solved for. It coupled two actually very existing ideas in the computer science world that had existed since the 70s into a unique solution that solves for a store of value problem.
The two ideas are public ledger and blockchain.
Are public ledgers and a system called as proof of work. That a public-private encryption key system can be used to secure a blockchain, a chain of transactions.
Okay. What is the blockchain technology? Let's go a little bit technical.
Okay. So again, let's break the words up. Like, blockchain literally is a chain of blocks. Each block has some information. Now, what is the information that each block has? The information that each block has is just a list of transactions. So a blockchain is nothing but a very long list of transactions. It's a long ledger that just holds this information of who owns what amount of what thing. That's it. That's what it is, right? Now, who owns is the person, what amount is an amount, it's a number, and the thing is what you want to track on a blockchain. So you can track, let's say, oranges or rupee or shares of a company or anything for that matter on this general purpose ledger, which is called as a blockchain, right? Bitcoin specifically is the Bitcoin blockchain is a blockchain that tracks a currency called as Bitcoin, which is a currency created by the blockchain network that is limited in supply, with the thought process of being an alternative to the gold in the world. That's the thought process which Bitcoin and blockchain has been created.
Okay.
That's like the simplistic answer for it.
All blockchains have a public ledger?
Yes.
Okay. And by public here, it means participants of that chain who are hosting a node.
It means that Yeah, by public, it means that if you have, let's say, the transaction ID, you can go to a website, search for that transaction ID, and get to know which addresses moved what amount of money from where to where. The
Okay.
other thing is also true that if you have an address, you can go to some website, put in that address, and get to know all transactions that that address has done. So
Okay.
the public nature of blockchains is very, very important and very much required because that makes sure that enables that there is trust in the system. Because if you can't verify, then who will trust you, right? Of course, there are private blockchains as well. So I'm not saying that there are no public, there are only public blockchains. There are private blockchains that only participants of the ecosystem will get access to all of this information.
Okay, understood. Okay, got it. And you said the proof of work concept. I'm still curious about proof of work. What is
Of
proof
course,
of
of
work?
course. So there's let's try and first understand the problem. Let's say it's you, me, and Shivani. The three of us are there on an island. Now you and I did a transaction, and let's say all of us are just using a splitwise account, and you and I did a transaction that Shivani gets to know because there is some money that I owe you that you need to settle with Shivani. Now, let's say you can go and write, ki, okay, Edul gave Akshay some money, and at the same time, you can also falsely write, Edul gave Shivani some money, right? Without me or Shivani knowing. If me and Shivani don't know, and you write this transaction, and this transaction is accepted in the ledger, then basically there is some money that just went away from me to Shivani without me knowing. Now that's a problem.
Right.
So the first problem is that who should get the rights to enter a transaction? So let's say if you know which transaction you are going to enter, then of course you will try and game the system in a way where you can make money. Because that's what everyone does. Like that's the history of money. That if someone gives too much power to some entity, that entity will try and game the system to get more money. Right?
Yeah,
That's how it
including
works.
central banks. Right.
Yeah, including central banks, right? The entire point of quantitative easing is exactly this: that central banks have too much power and they will try and print money willy-nilly whenever they want.
Right.
So that's the first problem. That there should be a fair system for people to be able to enter transactions, and a randomized system for people to be able to enter transactions. That's one part. So that's one part. The second part is that okay, if you create this fair system and this fair system is known to everyone, then that system should not be gameable. And when I say gameable, it means that the cost of gaming the system should be higher than the reward you will get by gaming the system, right? Which means that, which almost means always that either you need to put in a lot of effort to game the system, or if you game the system and you get caught, then the penalty should be large. These are the two ways in which you can do it, right? There is a positive
Right.
reinforcement, there is a negative reinforcement. So
Right.
Bitcoin follows the pathway of you needing to put in much more effort than you need to be able to game the system. And the way it does it is that what it simply does it says, okay, here are all the blocks, here are all the transactions that have come in. The software will merge all of those transactions by something called as a public key encryption method. It will create a hash of all of those transactions. And it will say that, okay, this is the hash. Now you need to find the key, which effectively is, in plain terms, it means that, okay, I have generated a PDF. I have created a password for that PDF. Now you figure out what the password is, right? And there is no real way in which how you can figure out the password without you trying to just guess. So
Right.
when you're trying to guess, basically you're doing some work. And because you are trying to guess, it's random. So you can guess it, Shivani can guess it, I can guess it. But a lot of guesses need to go for someone to be able to unlock it, right? So that's basically the entire proof of work system. Bitcoin generates effectively a block. It encrypts it and says that, okay, this is the hash. Now everyone can try and guess the key to unlock that hash. And a lot of people put in the work, which is basically compute to find the key to unlock the hash. Once you find the key, you unlock the hash, you are able to then decide which transactions go in. Because it is random and because it is based on the work, it almost ensures that this negative behavior of someone trying to game the system does not come in. And it ensures that all the transactions that go through in a fair manner. And the fair manner is basically anyone who is going to put in the transactions will have to put in only those transactions that have higher fees. So the fair is economic incentive and economic alignment for everyone in the system to make sure that the transaction is secure. So this is the proof of work system, that you do work to unlock a set of transactions, and you do that by putting in a lot of compute. That's the Bitcoin method to do it.
Okay.
There's also something very popular called as proof of stake, which is what Ethereum and a lot of the other things follow. Is the other way, which follows the penalty route. That okay, you are going to put in some stake into the system, and then if you game the system, and if someone says that you did something wrong, then we will take away your money. That's basically the other end of the spectrum. Proof of work, of course, is very robust, very secure. Proof of stake also is very robust, very secure. But proof of work requires a lot of active work. It requires a lot of compute, requires a lot of energy, and is slower. Proof of stake is much faster. So some pros and cons of both systems, but both work.
Okay. What is the incentive for the one who decrypts that hash to not put in a wrong transaction?
Excellent question. So you came to the exact right point. Ye sab kaam koi karega kyun? Why do I need to even do the work? Right? You say proof of work, what was the point of doing the work? So all Bitcoin in the world gets generated via this method. So when you do the work and secure the transaction, you get Bitcoin. And all new Bitcoin in the world is generated via this process, which is why this process is called as mining Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is similar to gold, and all new gold in the world is generated by mining. So all new Bitcoin in the world is also generated by mining, which is this process. So, but basically there are two incentives. One is that all new Bitcoin gets generated via this. So the Bitcoin blockchain rewards you for doing the work. And any transactions that happen also have some transaction fee. So all the transaction fees of all transactions that went into that block come to you as the mining incentive, as the transaction incentive. So that's how people do it. And effectively, this system is now so mature that it's very, very predictable. Because see, random number generation is a probabilistic event. Because it's a probabilistic event, it's kind of sort of predictable, right? It's basically all dependent on the amount of work that you do. So what has happened is that people have started to pool together effort to get some reward and then distribute that reward amongst everyone else. So running the entire Bitcoin blockchain network has almost effectively becoming a fixed yield business, where you put in these resources and you continue to put in these resources, and effectively on an average you will earn 11 to 12% yield. It might be 10% in some years, it might be 13% in some years, but over a 3 to 5 year period you will earn 11 to 12% yield, which is so, and it's how very beautifully the entire system is created always marvels me, that the economic incentives for all participants are always aligned to make sure that the system always works. That's the beauty of Bitcoin and blockchain. That's kind of sort of half of the reason why I got into all of this. And it just seemed very elegant and a very, the nerd inside me got into it because it just seemed like a very elegant way to solve for a very important problem in the world.
I remember reading about the consensus mechanism, that if you really want to game and make a wrong entry in the ledger, you need to buy consensus, which is very expensive, and it also destroys the reputation of the coin, therefore reducing the value of your holding. And
correct.
Okay.
That's why there's a lot of economic incentives, right? No one is incentivized to break this incentive mechanism of Bitcoin, because what will they get? Because first, it's very expensive to do it. At this point in time, it will cost you a few $1 billion to break to make a wrong entry, even maybe just a few hours back ago. So see, what happens is that the more time delay comes in, the harder it becomes. So if you want to, let's say, go back a day and change the transaction that happened yesterday, you'd probably need to spend compute resources to the order of a few $1 billion. So it's very expensive to do it, right? So that's one part. B, once you do it, everyone in the world knows that this has happened. So if it has happened, and the only thing that you're going to change the value of Bitcoin from one person to other, the value of Bitcoin goes to zero. So even if you did it, there's no incentive for anyone else to value it. So the implicit trust mechanism and the implicit economic alignment of all actors, good and bad, is very, very unique. And that's why actually it's not just a technology change, right? Like we often say that blockchains are a technology improvement. They are technology improvement, yes, but more so, actually, it's a very interesting change in social group behavior dynamics where you are willing to trust a person hundreds of miles away. That was a problem that never existed until the age of the internet came. Uh, and how do you do that without trusting anyone, without even knowing who the other person is in a decentralized manner, right? That's the real problem that Bitcoin and most blockchains solve for. That they solve for the social trust problem, and which is why this entire crypto movement is as much a technology movement as it is a social movement, as it is a political movement as well, right? Because when you're touching money, you're basically touching power, and people who have power don't want to give away power so easily, right? And there are also a lot of reasons as to why the world's financial structure is evolved to the way it is, and that needs to change in a politically, socially driven manner only. It cannot change by some company or some person coming and taking away power. Unless there is another Hitler who tries to take over the world. But keeping that aside, in reality, for humans to coordinate in the age of the internet, to do financial transactions in the age of the internet in a trustless, decentralized, low-cost manner, you need systems like blockchains to exist.
Okay.
Anyways,
You were talking of till 2013. You were just going through that evolution. Let's just finish that thread, and then we'll talk about Mudrex.
So 2013 kind of sort of saw the first usage of Bitcoin early on, primarily in basically dark web, where people thought that Bitcoin was not traceable, and okay, we could just send money to someone and no one will be able to trace who we are. In hindsight, just 8 years later, that is not found to be true, where some of the largest dark web websites, all transactions over there have been now traced to, and all fraudulent transactions have been caught actually much faster than a lot of other scams in the world. So the earliest usages were there, but those people started to recognize that, okay,
the reason why people think that Bitcoin is anonymous is because the public information is just the wallet ID. It's not your name.
But I think it's a marketing blunder.
No, I mean,
I think it's a marketing blunder.
It's just the fact that any exchange which wants to operate needs to have KYC, and because they need to have KYC, so every wallet ID can be linked to a real person, because most exchanges need to have KYC. That is the reason why it is not anonymous. But if you were to have a exchange where you don't have a KYC mechanism, you could still get anonymity?
No, so I think in the decentralized world, and we'll just talk about pure blockchain world, okay? There are actually wallets and exchanges. KYC is of the wallet. The exchange is just a mechanism for you to transfer funds or convert one thing to another. That's literally what an exchange is.
Is where buyers and sellers meet, basically.
Right. So eventually, at least I can fast track and tell you where I think the world is heading. The world is heading to a point where every wallet will be KYC, which is great. Like, of course, you should know where you are, who is sending money to whom. It's very important. Every wallet will be KYC. There will be a bunch of things that KYC wallets can do, and there will be a bunch of things that will still continue to happen in the non-KYC world. But when you are wanting to move anything from KYC world to non-KYC world, there will be a gateway of identification, which will eventually lead to more and more and more things being KYC. That's the right pathway in which we will move in this front, and that's basically happening world over even today. There is now an FATF compliance that all wallets need to follow, which includes something called as a travel rule, where you need to know who the originator is and who the end entity is. Because of course, all of this is important, and of course it will happen. We are talking about money. It's the world's, I think, after defense and pharma, it's the world's third largest regulated industry. It's
right. Okay. So coming back, so it started with the dark web marketplaces.
Yeah, so it started a lot with that. At that point in time, a lot of people also realized that the value of this is far more than just doing these dark web transactions. This is basically happening right now, and everyone who thinks they won't get caught will get caught. But what you actually really need to do is that this is going to be a large asset, and everyone is going to participate in it. So people want to buy it and sell it, and that's when the first exchanges started. Fast forward to 2015, this thing called as Ethereum started gaining the idea that why does only transactions need to be there? Why can't compute also go on the blockchain, and why can't we verify things on the blockchain via this ledger? Why only transactions need to be verified? Also started gaining momentum, which is when Ethereum came out, and in 2017 both Bitcoin and Ethereum gained a lot of traction, gained a lot of value. At that point there were a lot of these ICOs that came in that said that okay, if Ethereum is a public ledger and it can list anything and everything, then let's start listing anything and everything. And the first wave of experiments of listing anything and everything on blockchain started. That failed miserably, with a lot of scams happening, with a lot of people losing a lot of money. But what did come out of that was that a few years later, 2019, 2020, a lot of core technology required to do all of these things became viable. And that's what I think that's the key part that a lot of people miss. See, this entire industry, the entire crypto industry, is no different from any other startup industry, right? There will be tens of thousands of startups that will try and do something. Some of them will work, very, very few of them will work. Vast majority of them will fail. A lot of people will lose money. But the ones that will work will end up creating a lot of value for everyone else. That happens in every startup ecosystem, every asset ecosystem. It's just the same thing happening over here in crypto as well. Plus over here, individuals get the ability to invest. So that's the part that's different. So 2019, 2020, the first valuable things built on top of Ethereum started coming to the forefront, where decentralized exchanges came in, lending and borrowing marketplaces started, insurance products started, and so on and so forth, right? So everything that we talk about finance started getting built on top of Ethereum. And apart from that, a lot of other value transfer things, right? For example, all these NFTs or art pieces where people want value for different purposes in different collectibles, those started getting a lot of mainstream use cases. That started happening. In that way, a lot of people realize that okay, all of this is great, but the transaction fees are too high. Everything is just too slow. So we need to build technology again to now reduce costs and make everything much faster. So over the last 2-3 years, that's kind of sort of the broad technology wave where things have happened, where there are now a lot of layer 2s, layer 3s, other competitors to Ethereum, where the fees are much slower, the time taken for confirmation of transactions is much faster. But again, we're still far away. As I said, we're still
Ethereum has also pivoted into a proof of stake from proof of work, right?
Correct, which is all motivated by the same problem statement, right? Like, see, we should think of it that it's a sequence of problems that the entire industry is trying to solve. The first problem was that can you store something valuably and meaningfully without and align everyone's incentives that things will work? Okay, Bitcoin solves for that. Then Ethereum comes along and says that okay, can we now do transactions that are much more complex than just you sending money to me? And Ethereum solves for that. But while solving for that, it realizes that okay, the architecture that we used cannot scale. So okay, let's try and solve for scaling. So now Ethereum is trying to solve for scaling. Then once it solves for scaling, it will try to solve for okay, how can identity be managed? How can assets be managed? How can all of this money move more seamlessly? And it's a sequence of things that will happen over the next decade or so. Like Ethereum has a very large and long public roadmap, which is called as a roll-up centric roadmap now of the next 5-10 years, which is like very, very long term. And in an industry still so early, in an asset as important as finance, it's very, very motivating to have. Right? So
yeah, so true.
That's the problem that all of us crypto folks are trying to solve for. We try to.
What's on the roadmap? What are the next set of problems that will be solved?
So primarily, what Ethereum tries to solve for over the next few years is reducing cost of transactions. That's reducing cost of transactions without sacrificing security. In a way, by making it's trying to solve for it by making transaction specific entities that solve for it. So it's going down that path and it's working really well. The transaction fees on effectively using on the ETH network have become 1/10, and the transactions have scaled 100 times over the last 3-4 years. So the progress is there, and the progress is there by orders of magnitude. But it still hasn't reached this point where it's easy enough and cheap enough for everyone to start using it. It'll still take some time.
What is a transaction specific entity? So you're saying that the blocks will become specialized. Is that what that
No, so
means?
the entire mechanism is changing. How there are something called as Ethereum has moved to something called as rollups, and there are optimistic rollups that are popular today. But we are now moving to something called as a zero knowledge rollup. The point of rollups is that okay, Ethereum is very expensive, but why
What
don't
is a
you
roll up? Just
yeah, that's what I'm trying to explain. So Ethereum is, let's say, this base layer which is very, very secure, where all transactions get added. But let's say you were to spin up a small kind of sort of ledger of your own, settle some transactions over there, and then do the net settling on Ethereum, then you can make things cheaper. So this is what is called as a roll-up, that you are doing some transactions separately and then rolling all of those transactions into one transaction and adding it to the Ethereum layer. So you're basically trying to use Ethereum security, sacrificing some time-based risk of not being transaction secure, but then securing everything after some time and doing this then at much faster pace and at much cheaper cost. So
and this is also called a layer 2 blockchain, right? What you're
this is called as
talking
a layer
about
two.
here.
This is called as a layer two. And then there are different kinds of layer twos. There are optimistic rollups, and then now there are zero knowledge proof based rollups.
What is this
Both have some pros and
optimistic?
cons.
What does it mean? Optimistic roll up, zero knowledge.
Very interesting choice of words when people decided optimistic rollups. So optimistic, the word comes from the fact that we are optimistic that in this period when transactions haven't been settled to Ethereum, there will be no fraud. And
Okay.
there is some mechanisms that have been built in over here in the optimistic rollup mechanism to avoid people from doing any malpractice in that part. So it's basically siloing away risk. You don't have the risk of the entire Ethereum blockchain. The risk is this much. The risk is time bound, and still the effort that needs to defraud over here is large enough that people are optimistic. No one will do that.
Okay.
Hence optimistic rollup. But optimistic still relies on human behavior. That's why we are moving away now to zero knowledge based rollups, where it's you don't need to be optimistic. The entire system is deterministic, and you can submit proofs that you've done everything right to the blockchain at regular intervals, and that's also much faster. But right now, generating those proofs is an expensive thing. So Ethereum is doing a lot of changes to reduce the cost of generating those proofs. So
That proof is like an audit trail, basically. Like
Yes,
it
basically
not
an
only
audit.
submits the net transaction, but also an audit trail.
Correct. Basically, an audit trail where you can, again, similar concept. You can decipher the audit trail just by knowing your information and get to know whether everything done on your behalf is right. So, if everyone can verify that everything done on their behalf is right, that means it's right. Which was the original problem. Remember, I said that
Right.
you, I, and Shivani are on the island, and if you put in something and Shivani and I can't verify it, that means there is some case of fraud. But over here, if it's verifiable, that means that the chances of fraud reduce.
Okay. Now, speaking from a consumer perspective, when I have a Paytm wallet, it's it's linked to my phone, and I can log into Paytm and get access to my wallet, and then look at my transaction history, how much money I have, do transactions, etc. How does a crypto wallet work?
It's kind of sort of similar. You log in to a crypto wallet. Now there are methods with which you can log in using just your email ID, phone number. Just like how you would send money using your Paytm to a phone number, you send or to a bank account, you get someone's address details over here, which are the equivalent of a bank account, and send money to it. And you can view your transaction history, and you pay some fees to send the transactions. So from all practical purposes, it's all getting there. But these experiences right now are just not tightly knit enough for someone to love it. And plus, of course,
Why isn't
there's an
wallet
onboarding
yet
problem.
So a wallet is not yet a consumer grade product, right? From what I understand, most people don't actually use a wallet, but they just rely on the exchange and the exchange is the
Correct.
wallet of the exchange.
It's not. It's like a chicken and egg problem. Not everyone will use Paytm until Paytm is used everywhere.
Okay.
Right.
But
So-
what is the problem right now? Why is it not consumer grade? Help me understand the gap of experience here.
Which goes back to the original problem that fees are too high and transactions are too slow. So once you reduce fees and once you make transactions fast enough, there is no reason why people should not use this as their primary place of asset holding, then something else. And then it's just a matter of time that more and more people start having these assets on their own decentralized wallet. And then it's just a matter of time that more and more people start sending money via this because it's cheaper, faster, and instant. I shouldn't say faster, it's instant. It's cheaper and it's instant. And then it's a matter of time that you can convert these assets to your local fiat currencies. And we'll come to currencies at some point as to what's the purpose of a currency, easily enough. Where we are at a point where you can start using your wallet to buy eggs and bread at a local grocery. The real problem to solve for is that there is no mass adoption for any payment system till you can't buy it at your local grocery.
True. So what you're saying is that an exchange is doing a lot of transactions within their own wallet. Like an exchange would have buyers and sellers of Bitcoin and Dogecoin and Ethereum and Solana. So therefore, it is cheaper, faster for most users to not have their own wallet, but just use the wallet of the exchange. But
that's primarily the reason.
Okay, understood. So once that cost and time problem is solved, then
yeah, that's by the way what our bet is also. So Mudrex is not an exchange; we are a broker. We work with multiple exchanges. The reason why we work with multiple exchanges is because we think that the exchange world will not exist 5 years from now. Simply because there will be no incentive to run a centralized exchange because the cost of compliance is too high. The risk of custody is too high, and the cost of creating liquidity and creating a liquid in our market is also too high. So it makes zero economic sense for exchanges to exist once the decentralized world is fast enough and cheap enough. That's already started to happen. Uniswap is the world's second largest exchange now from a liquidity perspective. After Binance, and Coinbase is third. It's still not used by a lot of people because it's still more expensive and still slower. But it'll get faster in a few years. And that's why we believe that at Mudrex, there is no point in building an exchange. What you would rather build is you would build the infrastructure layer on top of the exchange to make it more usable for the day-to-day user. That's where we come in. We are a service provider that help you access all of these things in an easy enough manner. Now, of course, today we are custodial because, again, it's too expensive and too slow for everything to happen on-chain. But as time progresses, we will move more of our infrastructure to a decentralized manner.
You said cost of liquidity is too high for an exchange. What does that mean? Why does liquidity cost an exchange? As in, you need to do a lot of marketing to get a lot of users who want to buy and sell crypto. Is that what you mean by this?
Let's take a very simple example. We'll go to exchanges much later. At the end of the day, what is an exchange? It is a place where buyers and sellers come together to exchange one good for another. Good, currency, etc., one thing for another, right? Which means that someone is buying, which means someone is selling. Now, you want to, that's what an exchange is. The best format of exchanges are called as order book exchanges, where there's something called as an order book. And let me give an example what an order book is. Let's say you are an orange producer. You produce oranges in the world, right? And you've got a great bounty of oranges this year, and now you want to go and sell oranges. Who decides the price? Let's say you say that, okay, I put in so much effort into putting these oranges, and I effectively put in 100 rupees per kg worth of effort into it. If I get 110, I'm willing to sell it. So let's say you say that you are willing to sell oranges at 110. Now I am, let's say, from a juice company who wants to buy a lot of oranges. And I want to sell juice to people, but I know that if I buy oranges at 110, I will make a loss. I can only buy it at 105. So I'm putting in a buy order at 105. You are putting in a sell order at 110. Now, maybe there are other participants in the ecosystem that will come in between to try and bridge this gap, where some orders will get met. Let's say a Shivani comes in and says that I want to buy at 107, and a Rohan comes in and says that, okay, I want to sell at 107. Then, okay, these guys can settle the orders, exchange oranges for money, and live their life. And the job of an exchange is to enable these. The job of an exchange is to create this kind of a book where transactions can be settled, right?
Okay.
Which means that what are great exchanges? Best exchanges are exchanges where the gap between buying and selling is low, which is what we call as the bid-ask spread. How do you reduce the bid-ask spread? By getting people to come on the exchange. So you see where I'm going. Best exchanges are exchanges where there is low spread. Lowest spread is at places where there is lowest liquidity. Lowest liquidity is at places where there are most users, and most users want to go to best exchanges. So it's a cycle, right? And as a result, an exchange is the purest form of marketplace that exists, right? So imagine an Amazon. And Amazon is a marketplace where there are buyers who are listing things and there are individual sellers who are purchasing goods. but all the goods are the same. It's the same commodity, and everyone is want to buy the same thing, which means that it's a extremely competitive marketplace. And as a result, for an Amazon to get to its place, what it needs to do is it needs to seed liquidity, which means that it needs to pay someone. Which means that let's say it can, an Amazon, or in this case the exchange, needs to come and pay you, Akshay, and say that okay, you want to sell on it is 110. Why don't you do this? List it at 105. Shivani will buy it from you, but I will give you the 5 rupees. Right?
Okay.
That's why there is a cost to liquidity. You need to seed liquidity. Liquidity is seeded by incentivizing market makers to incentivize the market and make money. So unless you are a very large exchange, you don't make money. That's the reality. So unless you are at the scale of Binance, you don't make money, because no one goes to shitty exchanges, because shitty exchanges don't have liquidity, because no one goes there. Right. So in reality, most exchanges pay market makers to bring liquidity to an exchange, which brings retail users, and the market makers make money from the exchange and the retail users, and then some money is what the exchange makes from the retail users. Imagine, you can see this from other equity exchanges, right? What's the value of NSE? Value of an NSE is liquidity. And that's showcased in its market cap as well. Like NSE might be worth a few $1 billion, but all brokers and service providers who use NSE to service their consumers together will be worth maybe tens of billions of dollars. Exchanges don't, once an exchange is built, it's a race to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom because incentives are such where it becomes a race to the bottom, and you make value on the layer on top, which is
right. For an exchange, it's quantity over margin. Like how much you earn per transaction doesn't matter as much as number of transactions that you enable.
Yeah, and then exchanges are incentivized to offer faster access to orders and so on and so forth. Right. So those are things that misincentivize alignment of exchange.
So
which again leads to the same problem, that if you squeeze margins and all power is with exchanges, those exchanges will be incentivized to game the system in a way where it is not in everyone's best incentive, which is again why moving an exchange to a decentralized system where everything is open, everything is transparent, everyone has the same access is required and valuable. This is why Uniswap is valuable. And this is why Uniswap
which is where that payment for order flow comes in, which is a way to game the zero brokerage apps are essentially earning there.
Correct.
Okay. At FTX, Alameda was the liquidity provider, right? The market maker.
Alameda was a lot of things at FTX.
Okay.
So the history of Alameda is that actually Alameda is much older than FTX. Alameda was a fund that started off doing market making on other exchanges, because early on there was a lot of arbitrage as well. By doing arbitrage, they got large enough where they could do market making on exchanges. And once FTX and the guys at Alameda realized that they are one of the largest market makers, if they are one of the largest market makers, the best way for them to actually make the most money is to launch their own exchange. Don't pay any other market maker fees. Because cost of liquidity is high, as I said earlier. Don't pay any market maker fees. Do your own market making. Get retail users. Now you don't just only need to spend on acquiring a lot of users, right? So spend money acquiring users and then just make money from those users. So that's the FTX Alameda story.
But where did that thesis go wrong? Or was the thesis right? It was just executed wrongly?
No, the thesis was right. The thesis was right, but they ended up using user money for their own pocket expenses. You can't do that, right? The same issue again. Once you give someone a lot of power, it doesn't work. So
Alameda had like a 9 billion hole, right? There was only maybe a couple of 100 billion of misuse, but the rest was all losses. Why was Alameda making such losses? Was it because they were market making and for their own exchange and so making losses?
No, because they were humans, and every human is susceptible to greed and fear, and they just became too greedy, took customer deposits that they shouldn't have, leveraged those customer deposits to place orders that they shouldn't have, and then ended up losing money on those orders. That's basically what happened.
Okay, the market turned against them.
It's finance 101. It's basically the 2008 financial crisis. It is every single boom and bust that has ever happened in the history of humanity. Just repeat again. People become too greedy. They think that they are too smart and they will never get caught. They take too much leverage and too much risk. that too much leverage and too much risk blows up on their face. Which is why I say the problem with FTX is that it was run by humans.
So Alameda was betting on coins which it thought would go up, but then the market turned against them, and that caused the hole in the balance sheet. Okay.
And it caused a short-term liquidity crisis. Basically, it was the same thing that happened with the Silicon Valley Bank, right? What did Silicon Valley Bank do? Silicon Valley Bank bought mortgages that were too long-term, the price of which turned against them once interest rates started to go up. And if they had to sell it, they had to sell it at a loss to furnish users who wanted to withdraw money. The same thing happened with FTX. FTX bought tokens at a point where it was too expensive. Prices went down, which means those tokens worthless. And when a lot of people started withdrawing, they had to sell those tokens at a loss to basically pay for the withdrawals.
Right. The loss gets exacerbated because you are selling it off.
The loss is exacerbated as well as it gets booked. See, there is unrealized losses and realized losses. Okay. As long as they're unrealized, no one cares about it, right? Like even today, the other ticking time bomb that a lot of banks are sitting on is that a lot of banks have a lot of large unrealized losses in their portfolio. It's just that they're not marking it to market because that's not the regulatory requirement. Unrealized losses are okay as long as you don't need to pay. But once you need to realize them, that's when the entry comes on the balance sheet. And that's when you really owe someone money. And it goes from a fictional debt to a real debt. And that's when everything blows up on your face.
Okay. So we spoke of the technology problem. What is the adoption problem? How will it become mainstream adopted? You said it'll take 3 years to solve technology problem, 10 years to solve adoption problem.
Correct. So as I said, right, like let's think of it. Why did UPI get adopted in India? UPI got adopted in India because basically on the one end, the government of India banned all cash. And then on the other end, it pushed every single bank to accept UPI, right? It's a political will problem to solve. Like, by the way, I'm not taking away anything from UPI. Like, in fact, when I was at Tabzo, we were one of the first digital products in the country to integrate UPI. And we were using UPI at a point when UPI had a 70% failure rate. Not a success rate, a 70% failure rate. 70% of the transactions would fail on the UPI. This was way back in 2016. But we've come from a long way, right? UPI has scaled up to be the world's largest payment network. But that was an outcome of course, a lot of technological work that people did, but it was really an outcome of a lot of political will that the country showed. And then the central bank showed and deployed, and then a lot of actual capital that companies like Google Pay, PhonePe, and Paytm spent in educating and creating the market, right? So a lot of those things need to happen. And without this political will, the only way it happens is if economic incentives align. And the greatest economic incentive is that people make money. And that's the economic incentive on which Bitcoin adoption is also growing, right? Like Bitcoin adoption in reality happens because people become greedy. They think that they can make money. So they buy Bitcoin, hoping that they will make money in the future. Once a lot of people start buying Bitcoin, the prices inflate far away from what reality is. That reality crashes. The people who bought Bitcoin end up holding Bitcoin. And then a few years later, reality and expectations start to get realigned and they actually make money. And that's when they realize, okay, I didn't make money. And this cycle just repeats again and again and again. And that's the natural way in which adoption will happen, unless it's forced with political will. So if there is political will, it will happen faster. Because then there will be economic incentives for companies to come and capture this wallet part once the technology problem gets solved for a few years from now. And that will happen eventually. There are jurisdictions in the world where this political will is coming together, right? For example, Europe. Europe is putting up a very clear, very strong regulations called as a MiCA regulation, which Mudrex is. We are already a virtual asset service provider in Europe. We are an FI registered entity in India. Europe is today leading the way. Some of this way is also being led in, let's say, Australia and Canada. Once Europe implements it, I mean, and for that matter, actually, India is also not far behind. Like the policy frameworks are coming along the pathway of recognizing it as an asset, recognizing it as a legitimate way of storing, transferring value, and so on and so forth. And once that part gets solved for, there are economic incentives for private companies like Mudrex to spend to create a market for it. And then once there is a market for it, there are individual users for it. And then it's a vicious loop, right? Once there are users, you can start creating things that users can do with it, which then drives more users and so on and so forth. And the reason why people are moving to it stops being just the value appreciation, but the seamlessness and ease of transactions. It's a classic network effects problem that gets seeded again.
Okay, interesting. So what you're saying, I'm just recapping. What you're saying is that just as Google Pay, Paytm, etc., had a whole 2-3 year period of cashbacks and coupons to promote UPI adoption, the same thing will happen or needs to happen in cryptocurrency of private players incentivizing users to come create wallet and spend money through the wallet through cashbacks and coupons, etc. And the incentive for a private company to do this is that they feel that this will become mainstream, so we should acquire more customers than our competitors. And once we acquire these customers with their wallet, then they will prefer to buy or to recharge their phone or to do other transactions also. Look what Paytm's theory was.
The same classic. Yeah, once you acquire distribution, you can make money. You can make money by 10 other things.
Okay, got it. Okay, okay. So
keys to get to distribution. But as I said, the technology is a few years away. Actually, again, getting the distribution is the easier challenge. And I think the biggest, if you look back over the last couple of years, the real progress that has happened is that in the world, in the crypto world, of course, there has been a lot of technology progress and the tech has become better and faster and cheaper. But the real progress that has happened is actually on the regulatory side. Regulators now understand what crypto is. Why is it valuable? How to use it? There is a global movement to push towards assimilating it. And the reason why it's all happening faster is because it is a global movement, right? Crypto is not an India problem. It's not a UPI thing that only works for India. It works world over. And we are fortunate enough to be in a country where the central bank is robust, where the inflation is not that high, where you actually have a payment method like UPI that settles money quickly. A vast majority of the world doesn't have this. Like a vast majority of the world doesn't have UPI. A vast majority of the world actually is suffering from hyperinflation and their own local currency being devalued faster than they can earn. So there are a lot of real problems that most of the world suffers from, that most of the world also recognizes and also sees crypto as this alternate pathway to solve for a lot of those problems. So which is why there is global consensus, which is why there will be adoption globally, and that adoption is getting fast-tracked. Like it took nearly 15 years for futures and options to become mainstream in India after it became mainstream in the US. Crypto has taken less than 3. And it's actually growing faster. And this is just India. The same thing is repeating world over because it's a global movement, because it's money built for the internet, because it's all of these compounding things that are happening again and again and again is what is increasing adoption. This is why Mudrex is a global company. We are building a global product. Although we've got 1 million users in India and we are India's largest crypto investing app, we also have a very large and growing presence in Europe. We are actually one of the top 5 players in Italy, where users are coming to Mudrex using our platform for investing, buying and selling and growing. We are one of the largest on-ramp, off-ramp providers in India, and we are now growing that in 27 other countries. Crypto is a global problem to solve because you remember what I started with. The reason why we wanted to get into all of this is because we said that financial services is a problem. Financial freedom and independence is a problem. And the problem at the core is a problem of education and a problem of how internet, of how money works in the age today. The only way it can get solved for is if money moves to the internet, and crypto is a format of money moving to the internet. The cost of accessing that information and that service basically goes to zero. And this is a problem that's a global problem that happens.
Is crypto a store of value or is it a currency? And I'm just talking like even forward looking, like 10 years later, what would your answer to this be? Like today, I know your answer is crypto is a store of value, not a currency, but 10 years later, what would be?
My answer is not that at all. Crypto is not a store of value, is not a currency, is not an asset, is not a commodity, yet somehow it's all of these together. Because you can't just say crypto is a store of XYZ. Let me give you an example. When someone is valuing a pharma company, do they value it in the same way they value a bank? No, right? Like that's not how it works. Like banks are valued in a different way. IT services companies are valued in a different way. Pharma companies are valued in a different way, right? So it's like basically saying like all stocks are banks. That's not true. All stocks are not banks. There are pharma companies, there are infrastructure companies, and so on and so forth, right? People generalize it to people generally to crypto also in the same way, because we have not gone deep enough, we are not nuanced enough, it's not, access is not large enough where people are going that depth. That has started to happen over the last few years. There are now basically companies that are doing independent research on independent individual tokens, trying to say that, okay, the fair value of this token should be this much, or this is what the utility of this product is, this is how this product will get utilized, right? To that extent, this info is still very unorganized, that players like Mudrex are now doing the job of aggregating this information and bringing it. We've got a product called as Mudrex Insights, where we aggregate a fundamental analysis, technical analysis, sentiment analysis all together to give investors a single kind of sort of research analyst view for all practical purposes as to where is this particular token going, right? So it's all very early. We'll get there. But that's where it's progressing. So coming back to answer your question, it's not a store of value. Some part of crypto is, Bitcoin is. It's not a currency, but some currencies are, USDT, USDC are. It's not a property, but some tokens are, and so on and so forth, right? There are, because it's so many of these things together, it's a movement. And that's what you should really look at it as.
What is currency for? You said you'll come to this point on what a currency is for.
Let's go back to currencies then. Of course, there are numerous books written on the history of money, and basically there is consensus that most of money originated because barter was too hard, right? And barter was too hard because someone had grains and they wanted beans, and the guy who wanted beans did not want grains, they wanted cows, and the one who had cows did not want beans, they wanted sheep, right? So the problem of money was said that, okay, you cannot have a liquid enough marketplace of everything going to everything, right? Like, all of these words are important. You cannot have a liquid enough marketplace of everything going to everything. So let's create one thing that everything goes to, that everything can be bought against for. That was basically origins of money for all practical purposes.
Like a standard unit of measurement in a way. Like everything is measured on this unit.
Yeah, and there were various different intermediary things that were used for money. Gold coins got used, pebbles got used, coffee beans got used to solve for this problem. The problem was common, right? Then this money converted to currencies, when actually there was also an initiation of large governments coming together. Because once society started organizing themselves into large enough entities, which could be called as nations or nation states or cities, the nations or nation states or cities actually needed a way to generate revenue, and generate revenue in a recognizable manner in the format of tax. Like tax and death and taxes have been there forever, right? It comes from this, that money converted to currency because the state needed a way to tax so that it could spend on building infrastructure and providing a resilient and robust enough military so that the economy and the nation could flourish. And that was basically, for all practical purposes, origins of money. Having said that, money has a very real problem. The real problem of money is that it deflates over time. There is no value of currency, because the purpose of currency is just to be an intermediary stopgap of you wanting to sell beans and someone else wanting to buy grain. That's the only problem that it's supposed to solve. Now, all of these are real problems in an era when information is not available of who wants to buy beans and grains at free of cost. So a world, I imagine, and so that's one problem. And then the second problem is that the reason why people started holding cash was because that if you wanted to convert one thing to cash and then convert cash into the other thing, it would just take a lot of time, right? So that's why people have cash. But I'm pretty sure nowadays a very few people carry cash because most of their money is because most of the things can happen via UPI, and most of that money is in a savings account that is earning some interest. Or for that matter, people have gone beyond a point where most of the money is actually in mutual funds. It's an asset, and you're holding very limited amounts to just do your day-to-day transactions, right? So you see how money is evolving very, very rapidly in this age, where even 10 years ago, our parents or even us would have a lot of cash sitting around, which was non-productive, which was actually reducing in value because there was inflation always. and or it would get spoiled or something like that would happen, and you could not exchange this cash easily for other things. But all of this is being solved for, and it's being solved for at a very rapid pace, where we are now at a point where very few people actually hold anything in their bank accounts, and most of the things are more and more and more becoming investments. This is where things are going. And in an era where you will be able to access more and more of your assets in a decentralized format, in a format that's available on your wallet, why will you ever need cash? Apart from the original purpose that you only need it as a way of intermediary transactions. So that cash will still exist because it will stop being the reason of barter, but actually more being the reason of still organizing humans in a society. There are central government needs to influence its power, needs to do taxation, needs to understand where money is flowing. That will end up being the real purpose. And that will continue to be. And that's a great purpose to solve in itself, right? For example, a lot of rupee in India is also going digital. There is a CBDC program that the RBI is wanting to work on, where it sees that that's going to be the next pathway for rupee. There was a recent paper called as Finternet that was launched by Nandan Nilekani, where he, put out this grand idea where most of rupee should become digital, democratized, decentralized, and it should just be used for the main purpose of it, which is just intermediary for facilitating transactions from one to the other, right? So that's why the value of the reason for you to hold currency should decrease over time. You should only hold currency in an intermediary, very small enough time frame that helps you go from one to the other. And as everything gets digitized, as more and more things and move to the age of the internet, and what internet solves for is giving you access to information at close to zero cost. There will be a market for everything available at close to zero cost, so that the reason for you to hold cash becomes lesser and lesser, where you can almost, for all practical purposes, see it only as an intermediary for the time being transaction.
Fascinating.
That's story of currency.
Okay. So a digital rupee is essentially an efficiency move. Like today, exactly. If RBI wants to increase cash circulating in the country, then they have to actually print notes. So
they have to do a lot of things. They have to change the repo rate. They have to print notes. They have to incentivize banks to change their interest rates. Right? You can understand there are so many of these flavors. And let's keep that example aside. That's a more complex example for people to understand. Let's take the simplest example. The RBI wants to give subsidy, or not the RBI, the government wants to give subsidy to a farmer to buy fertilizers. Today, after a lot of effort, we've got something called as a direct debit scheme, where the subsidy directly goes to the farmer's account. But the government still does not know if the farmer is using it to buy fertilizer, or are they using it for their their child's wedding, or to buy jewelry, or to buy a tractor, or to basically buy alcohol and drink it off in the night, right? So that's the other large problem, that subsidies given do not take the impact of what subsidy should, because you actually don't know where is it being used. And if you want a
digital rupee will have that ledger, and therefore more data on where every rupee is being spent. Okay, wow, right. Fascinating.
I mean, like this is not rocket science. Like Sodexo has been doing this for the last 30 years in the format of coupons, and Zeta does that today, right? What is it? It's just a wallet that has money that you can spend only on food outlets. And there is a network of people who've said that they are food merchants, and there is an entity that is giving you money in your wallet to spend on this network. The digital rupee is the same experiment at a national wide scale. That's what it is.
Okay, amazing. So there is essentially no need for paper money to exist, like maybe in maybe half a dozen years or so. Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, it always boils down to efficiency. If the costs of using paper money are higher than than the effective cost of doing everything digitally, people will stop using paper money. By the way, I don't know when you have last used cash. I have not used cash in like the last 2 months. The last time I used it was at a toll booth. And the reason why I used it was my FASTag recharge was not working because apparently there was no internet that day. That was literally the last time when I used cash.
No internet is probably the last time most people would have used cash. That's so true.
So that's the world where we are moving. But because cash is so deeply penetrated into the social structure into society. Money is a part of society, right? Societal changes take time. They don't happen overnight. Like technology changes are faster, but distribution of technology changes take time, especially those technology changes that are societal in nature.
Let's talk about Mudrex now. We spent a lot of time understanding the overall space. What did you want to build when you decided to build Mudrex?
Correct. So recapping, we said that this was 2017 and we wanted to solve for financial services. And we felt that the real inhibitor was that access to information is not available at the pace at which the internet is moving. And the world needs money for the internet. And crypto is going to be this money for the internet. It's going to take 20 years to get there. So the thought process was, okay, this is the real solution. Now, what can we do to get into it, right? And the obvious step one is that either you can build on the core blockchain technology to solve for some of the problems over there. We felt that although there were real problems to solve over there, but a lot of those problems would be solved by a lot of the devs and a lot of the work that was happening on the underlying chains. And it was probably too premature for us to tackle that problem. Rather, what we could focus on was to in the meanwhile, get more and more people into crypto. Because in reality, what will always be needed is that there will be a fiat world. There will be a pathway to go from fiat to crypto. And then there will be the crypto world. This will always exist, irrespective of whatever happens, at least for a large, meaningful period. That was one. And the second thought process was that the way people will start coming into crypto is, as we discussed earlier, either there will be a regulatory push for this to happen, but that is unlikely because basically because it's literally against the core principles with how the current money is built, and that core principles need to be rethought before that happens. So that regulatory push is not going to happen anytime sooner. So if there's not going to be a regulatory push, the only thing left is an economic push, that users will participate into crypto because they just want more money. They want to invest in it. They want to participate in wealth creation over time, right? So if we wanted to build gateways, then we would want to rely on this fiat to crypto layer, and we would want to help users create wealth using crypto. So that's where, all thinking narrowed down to. So I said that, okay, let's start off by building a crypto trading platform, a crypto exchange for that matter. And although even at that point, ambitions were global, but he said, there's no point in competing globally. The real largest user base in the world is India. India is going to be the largest democracy in the world. It has demographic dividends that will pay off over the next 40 years. So what's the point of solving for anything like this without prior solving for that for India? So we said, okay, let's try and solve for India. So we started building out a cryptocurrency exchange. That's what everyone does when you want to become a gateway. So 2017 September, all of this was clear. Okay, this was the pathway. Then me and my other three founders, we got together. We started thinking about how do we build out, what needs to be built. By I think December, and I had quit my job. Another one of my founders had quit my job. The other two founders were anyways looking for new ideas. They were just off one startup. So the four of us got together. January, we set up or registered the company. And by April 6th, we had like a fully functioning beta version out. Users were using it. They were loving the product and everything was going great. And we were going to go full scale launch on April 15th, 2018. And by then we had also, narrowed down seed investors who had agreed to give us some capital to run all of this. All of that happened at very quick pace. What's supposed to happen with the startup, right? But unfortunately, 8th of April, the RBI comes in and bans crypto in the country.
What was the nature of the ban? I mean, it's...
So it was an outright ban. You couldn't effectively what the RBI said is that you cannot use any banking channels, you cannot use anything to transact with crypto, and crypto is effectively not allowed in the country. Was the first ruling that effectively came out. And then there were talks that all of this will translate into, we will figure out how to handle crypto, and then there were discussion papers and decisions and so on and so forth that continued till 2020, where effectively in that 2020 paper, the conversation that was going on was, anyone who uses crypto, why don't we put them in jail for 10 years? So it had gone to that extent as well. That was the one end of the thought process, right? In the meanwhile, of course, there's another funny story. Okay, so I remember 4th of April, I was sitting with one of our lead investors, was leading the round, and we were having this exact conversation. He asked me, "Ki, Acha, what do you think is the probability that the RBI will ban crypto altogether in the country?" I said, "Yaar, see, there is a real chance. There is maybe a 20% chance that the RBI bans it. But if it is going to happen, it will happen in the next few months. In which case, if it happens, you can always come back and tell me that I don't want to give you money. And if it doesn't happen, and if it happens right now, over time, it will obviously at some point in time get overturned. Now, whether the company will exist or not to last that long is a question. Whether we will continue to fight that battle in India or not is a question. And all of those questions will get answered later on once that event happens. So, of course, he took a lot. It took a lot of courage on their part also to say yes to us. And even after the ban happened, it took a lot of courage from then onwards also for them to say, okay, we believe in crypto, but more so we believe in you as a team. And all of this is very early. You guys will figure it out and so on and so forth. So it's like, okay, keep our money. We will take care of all of this much later. And 7 years later, we are still here. Anyways, so RBI bans crypto. RBI bans crypto. We are thinking if RBI has banned crypto, there is no market in the country. There is no point in continuing to operate in a shadow manner because that doesn't add confidence to users' thought process. It doesn't build a large enough and valuable enough business, and there is nothing that you can do over there. Globally, to compete with global exchanges, you need a lot of capital. We do not have that capital. So he says, okay, we will not build an exchange. And by that time, although we just spent 3-4 months building an exchange, we very quickly realized that exchanges are a race to zero. Because of all the things that we spoke about earlier, right? In the conversation the other day, that with exchanges, it's basically a race to zero. So there is no point in building an exchange. What you really want to build is tools for people who are using exchanges. And how can you make their experience better? How can you give them a much better system to solve for? And at that point, basically there were only
one question here. There is still it's a winner take all market, right? In crypto exchange, like there will still be one large have liquidity and will be profitable and a big business.
Correct. It's a winner take all market. It will be a global winner take all market and not a local one, because at the end of the day, all crypto to security will go to that global player, and locally people will still need to do fiat and crypto. Fiat to crypto will be there will be a local winner take all markets for fiat to crypto, and there will be global winner take all market for crypto to crypto. And that's basically exactly how things are panning out, right? Like the global winner is Binance today. But Binance is, because it's a centralized entity, it's facing a lot of scrutiny, and because it does a lot of things differently, it's facing a lot of scrutiny, and either it will resolve all of that scrutiny and continue to be the global winner take all player, or it will not be able to do it, and that tag will be taken by decentralized platforms like Uniswap and the 100 other exchanges that are out there. So the answer still remains the same, and that is how things have panned out as well. So globally, it will be that. Locally, you will need crypto to crypto, fiat to crypto players. It's the equivalent of, you can think of it as a remittance business, right? All of those things are then basically you are going from one currency to another or one fiat to another, and that will always be regulated, which is always going to be the case. In which case there will be local winners. Some players will be existing in multiple geos. For example, Coinbase is in multiple geos and so on and so forth. And now Mudrex is also in multiple geos and so on and so forth. So there will be local players, but that will not necessarily be a winner take all market, because that's a very service driven experience. It's not a best product, best rate, because rates will get commoditized and everything will rely on service. It gets us back to the original answer that I gave, that eventually it's a matter of whether you can offer a great quality of service and experience to your users, because the underlying product will get commoditized. And with commoditized products, there is no margin to be made, no business to be made, eventually monopolistic, and those are not fun businesses to run. As such, either you're a monopoly or you are dying. Would rather so you would rather build out on that service layer. And we said, okay, chalo, let's do this. And now let me set the picture slightly more globally. Okay, this is April 2018. Bitcoin has peaked to 18,000 or almost 20,000. It has already fallen to 13,000. People are saying that BTC is going to go to zero for the I don't know, the fifth time that BTC will die, crypto will die. All of those. We're basically at the starting of a bear market. So we are at the starting of a bear market. The RBI has banned crypto in the country. And here we are, four kids trying to figure out how do we provide access to crypto and make crypto more accessible to the rest of the world. That's where we were. So after a lot of understanding of where the market was, we realized that okay, there are roughly about at that point 15 to 18 million people globally who are doing anything in crypto. This is since then things have grown 10, 20x. But at that point, there were 15 to 18 million people doing anything in crypto. Almost all of those people who were doing anything in crypto were wanting to make money in the short term by trading. Specifically, either doing some kind of an automated trading or doing manual trading on exchanges or doing some kind of an arbitrage. So we said that, okay, this seems like a important and valuable problem to solve. Traders are anyways the people who make most of the money in any exchange. So why don't we build our infrastructure focused on traders? And as things evolve, as the platform evolves and so on and so forth, we will start doing things for retail users over time as that retail user base grows and grows and grows. So May, we finalized this. By June, July, we felt that what traders needed was a platform to automate their trading. So we built out that platform, launched a new version of Mudrex, which was now a global platform to help traders place trades in a better, more faster, smarter, and efficient way on exchanges. And then started building that out. So July, suddenly Mudrex went from being a local Indian exchange to a global platform. We did significantly consider that should we still continue to call the company Mudrex, because Mudrex is Mudra Exchange. It was a very local Indian kind of sort of context thing that we had built. But all of us has loved the name, so we thought, chalo, might as well continue it. It has a nice ring and feel to it, and we would rather just keep it.
So do you need the exchanges to play with you for you to automate what traders do on those exchanges, like some sort of an API integration?
Okay. Correct. Yes, we did. And this is again, like, people take API integrations for granted. But actually, even today, API integrations in equities world is shitty. So crypto, it is even worse off. Fortunately, some of the exchanges also realized that actually traders need this. So some exchanges started building out APIs for it. But it was horrible. It was a horrible 1.5, 2 years working with exchanges with non-standard formats, building redundancy and reliability to make sure that our users at the end of the day had a fantastic experience. But as I said, that's where the value is. That's the service value that we are adding, right? So that's the value that we tried to capture. And I think we were pretty successful in it, to the extent that we launched in July. By December, we had 1,000 odd customers using our product globally. We also got into Y Combinator in January 2019. So went to YC, did that till March. Scaled up from March, April onwards to a slightly more wider base of not only very deep traders, but surface level entry traders, started building tools for them. And fast forward to 2020, now our product was working great. We were getting a lot of traction.
One question about the product here. There are two ways in which I am visualizing this. One way is that Mudrex is acquiring customers and then saying that connect your Binance account to Mudrex. Or second is that on Binance there is a marketplace of apps, and one of those apps is Mudrex. What was it that you built?
It was a former. There was no marketplace that day. There is no marketplace that exists even today. That is a gap. Exchanges have their own problems, so let's not go there. It was the former. We were acquiring customers, asking them to connect their exchange accounts with us, and help them do a lot of the automation that they.
And how were you charging them? Like, this was like $1 fee.
Subscription fee.
Yeah. About like a couple of dollars a month?
It was. I think we launched at $19 a month, and there was of course an intro subsidy, which was at $9 a month. So effectively, people were paying us $9 a month.
And for a power user, it's a small amount. I mean, if you're
it's like peanuts, right? Like this is the amount of money that, like, one trade that we help you do right will make you more money than this. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, true. True.
Having said that, we highly underestimated what it takes to build an algorithmic, general purpose algorithmic trading infrastructure that scales to millions of users. It was a really, really hard problem, an incredibly hard problem. engineering wise, a really hard problem. And we still managed to do it really well, to the extent that by 2021, we were doing about $100,000 in revenue per month. We were break even.
Wow.
We were profitable as a business. We had tens of thousands of users using us from all across the world. At any point in time, there were maybe 1 million trading strategies running on the platform. There was really nothing like it that anyone had ever built, either in crypto or in equities. And and there are very clear reasons why anything like that should not exist also, which is what we will get to it sometime. So
help me understand, what was the product offering a power user? What were the features of it? Is there a comparable in the equity space of what you built?
no, there is none. So at the core, it was a visual editor using which you can create very complicated trading strategies. Let me give you an example. The simplest trading strategy is buy Bitcoin when price goes down 10% and sell it when it goes back up 10%. Right? Whatever. This is the simplest trading strategy. But for a lot of technical traders, they use something called as indicators. Indicators are basically just more complex combinations of price action and volume that gives you some sense of where the market is heading. And the largest such platform was TradingView, which was hosting indicators and so on and so forth. So we at one point supported 10,000 trading indicators, which are basically 10,000 specialized math functions that users can use. And then you can do a wide variety of combinations. So for example, let's say there is an indicator called as RSI. It's a very popular indicator. I'm not sure. It's popular among traders. Of course, not popular amongst the rest of the world. So RSI is an indicator that says that if RSI goes if RSI goes below 30, then buy. But if RSI goes above 70, then sell. Okay, whatever. It's some magic rule that people have come up with over time, right? So now what you could do is with Mudrex, you could say that if price dropped by 10% in the last week and RSI is below 30, you buy it. But you could just not do it. You could use any number of combinations of these, and then then it becomes really, really powerful. And then you can run this at every second, and you can run this on historical data to see how it works, do all the back testing. You can run this in real time doing paper trading. You can, of course, deploy your own capital and run this. And at one point in time, we were actually, because it was all algorithmic, right? So the core offering for core traders was that you can build this algorithm. But then what we had also created was a marketplace, because what we really realized is that actually 97% of traders fail. They really don't know anything. Having said that, what everyone is looking for is to make money. And the top 2-3% traders who make money, they just want leverage to be able to use their to be able to do the best from their strategy till whatever period the strategy lasts. So what we did is we created a marketplace where top traders could publish strategies. We would do the rating, curation, assign like a score to it, whether what strategy is useful for what, and then individual traders could just go out and pick a strategy, deploy capital, pay a monthly subscription fee to the strategy provider, which was basically 1%, 2% of the AUM per month, and we would take a commission out of that. It was a system where there were pro traders, there were users who were trying to build it, and so on and so forth. So
very interesting.
By 2021,
maybe small caps, small case.
Something like small case, but small case is basically mutual funds, and those don't trade every day. In fact, those small cases are supposed to rebalance once in 3 months. Here, there are strategies that are doing hundreds of orders per day. So there was a point in time when in some of our largest strategies, there were so many people investing that when an order would come in, an order would get triggered on thousands of accounts at the same point. And at that point, the orders were so large that we would move the market on Binance, on Bybit or whatever. Like you could one-to-one match and say, okay, an order hit on Mudrex, and then on Binance, suddenly the prices drop or the prices went up. And then over time, they just reconcile back to a mean price. And yeah, all of these were real problems, right? Because then it meant that your users are seeing slippage and they're not getting the real price that's supposed to be gotten, etc., etc., etc. Which is
how did you solve some problems?
So there are some problems that are solvable, which are infrastructure, reliability, and so on and so forth problems, which is what we were able to solve. But then there are some problems that you just cannot solve because of how the system is built, right? If it is an order book exchange, the person who goes first and the person who goes last will of course see different prices when they try and place the order at the same time, right? And that is a cause of concern. The only way you can stop for that is by either making it random across everyone, so that there is no preference ki isko pehle mile usko. So it's basically random is fair. That was the argument, that random is fair. Going back to Bitcoin, random is fair. So if it's fair, people care about it less. And then we started putting caps. So basically you can't invest more than a certain amount, or more than a certain number of people can't participate in a trading strategy, and so on and so forth. Those are ways in which we tried to solve for it. But in reality, these are systemic problems, which is why I said earlier that something like this should not exist also. Because there are some of these systemic problems that just will always create some error. There is an inherent error in the system, and which will just cause things like this to be delayed. Now, if it is a liquid enough market, it doesn't really matter. But if the market is not liquid and everything needs to happen very fast, then it doesn't work. And which is why, which is again why we zoomed into the fact that although we had built an infrastructure that something like a Goldman Sachs would build to do in-house trading, and ours was just much more wider and much more usable simply because it was being used by millions of these users. Really, there is no use case for it because it can only scale to a certain level, right? Like we could have still continued to build that business out. We could have, as I said, we were break-even profitable. We were doing about $100,000 of revenue per month. And by our estimates, then we felt that, okay, maybe the market continues to grow and this business continues to grow. But you will never be able to make a very large business out of it. Your business will get capped at $50-60 million valuation. So $50 to $100 million valuation. I'm saying that that's coming in from maybe because your yearly revenue will get capped at $6-7 million. That is one. And then your cost of user acquisition will always just continue to be higher because the churn will always be very high, because at some point some user might be dissatisfied because of these inherent system because of market structure problems. At some point in time, some users will get dissatisfied. They will churn out. You will continue to invest in CAC. That CAC will, at one point in time, you will, even if you were able to reach out to all traders, all investors, there was a ceiling to that business. And again, businesses with ceilings are not fun. So that's not something. So at that point in time, we realized this. At that point, we also raised our like a seed round from Nexus Venture Partners. We raised about $2.5 million in 2021. In between this, what had also happened is that in 2020, the Supreme Court issued an order saying that whatever the RBI had done is null and void. Basically, you cannot stop people from doing business. If you want to do it in a regulated format and do it in a structured manner. So that opened up India again. So we started going back to thinking about, okay, India is a large market. What can we do over here? There was this other realization that and by this time, 2021, we were starting to see another bull cycle emerge in crypto, where we were starting to see that, okay, newer people are coming in once again. And at that point in time, again, the number of users would have grown from the 15-18 million to about 25 odd million. But the real interesting thing that we were seeing happen was that actually there were no more new traders coming in. Because in reality, everyone who wanted to trade crypto was already in crypto. Because everyone was seeing the opportunity, everyone was seeing the arbitrage. Traders are early to identify all of these things, and they were already into crypto. The new people who were coming in were actually retail users. And for retail users, the kind of product you need to build is very different from what we had built. And what we saw was this very large opportunity that, okay, now the next 100 million consumers that are going to be coming in are retail users. They will require a very different layer of product and service from what we had built for traders. And that means that we need to now suddenly redo everything that we have done, change the form factor, change how the product works, change how the experience works, offer this new experience to our users, and then go ahead from there. Plus, what had also started to happen was that there was now we could start to see that there is a lot of regulatory noise that's happening, that regulators world over are waking up. Japan had just regulated crypto, and if Japan has done something, then it's just a couple of years behind when other major developed countries will start to do it. So Japan had just regulated crypto. Australia and Canada had started to issue licenses. Europe had come out with some format of registration, and registration is a precursor to a regulation, typically in most jurisdictions. So we could see that it's again that the same realization that we had in September, that crypto to crypto will be global, fiat to crypto will be local, fiat to crypto will be regulated. You need to start working on that front. And now the market structure was changing to more retail users coming in. So that okay, we are at this junction. We can see all of this happening. We now need to switch focus from traders to building more products for retail investors, and start servicing those retail investors. And as a result, that's exactly what we did. We said that okay, we will shut down this trader business. It's a great product. Nothing like this has ever been built in the past. Nothing like this will ever be built in the future, at least till what I see, for very specific reasons. But this is not what will help us scale from where we are to the next level of where we want to get to. So shut this business down. And we did that very gracefully. We moved from that system to a new system, and we started launching new products for retail users. And for retail users, what retail users want is they don't want active automated trading. They actually want very stable passive products like mutual funds, index funds, and so on and so forth, right? And those products did not exist in crypto till the Bitcoin ETF got launched in January this year. So okay, why don't we start building index funds for crypto? It's a simple offering. Everyone wants it. It's the best way to create long-term wealth. And especially if retail users are going to come in into crypto over the next 10 years to create wealth, they don't want to take the overhead of choosing tokens, right? No one really knows which equity stocks to invest in. Crypto is an order of magnitude more complicated. How can you expect them to invest in individual stocks? So we ended up launching we ended up launching a product called as CoinSets, which was basically index funds for crypto. We created a coin set called as Crypto Blue Chip, which was like the Nifty 50 equivalent. We created a mid-cap coin set, a small-cap coin set, and then we created some thematic coin sets. So NFT coin set, Metaverse coin set, AI coin set, and so on and so on. You get the gist. Launched that product in India, and again, because India had now opened up, he said, okay, but we have only so much capital, and retail is a very different ballgame. Retail is a brand building, trust building game, right? It's not just a performance game. Traders lie in communities. There will be a lot of word of mouth here. But for retail, you need brand, you need trust, you need to solve for all of those. So 21 April, May, we launched CoinSets as a first version on web. We said that, okay, web will only work so long because again, web was great for traders. Web doesn't work for retail. So we need to launch an app. So we launched an app September, October 21 in its full-fledged version. November 21, by November 21, we had already shut down the old product. All our users were on the new platform. And in November, we ended up raising our pre-series A. We raised about 6.5 million then, used that capital to scale and grow, acquired a lot of users. And by January 22, we were already at the end of that bull cycle that started from 21 to 22, right? It was again tapering. BTC now at 69,000 all-time high and looking to go down. And of course, what happens is that in all market cycles in such bull runs, what happens is a large wave of new users come in. So now suddenly, crypto has shifted from 15-18 million traders to 120 million retail investors and 15-18 million traders, right? And we were able to capitalize a large chunk of that cycle. And then 2022, April, May, we raised our Series A. And by this point, our product was there, everything was there, but the market had entered into a new bear phase. And then in 2022, we got hit with 3 black swan events, which was the collapse of Luna, there was the collapse of 3AC, and then there was the collapse of FTX. Back to back in a span of 6 months. And any one of them could have taken us out. And not only has it actually, because it did take a lot of people out, right? Like there were, I think maybe 70% of the crypto ecosystem was affected by these 3 black swan events. These are events that happen once in a decade, and it happened all together in the same year in a span of 6 months in crypto. All an outcome of greed and fear, and we've already discussed what happened with FTX, right? So it's that perpetual cycle of greed and fear that eventually plays out. That's what happened in crypto. By December 22, we were firmly in the middle of a bear market. And we said that, okay, bear markets are a great time to start building. So we started building again. Our retail product, CoinSets, was a great was a great hit. Users continued to invest in it because the thought process and the positioning was कि index funds है, तो फर्क नहीं पड़ता price आज क्या है. You do an SIP, you just continue to invest in it for the longer run. We started building out more and more things for retail users. So we built out the investment part. So you could start investing in individual coins. You could invest in almost a fixed income product called as Vault. And we continue to improve that entire layer. But I think more importantly, what we did start investing in 2022 was that we said that, okay, now regulations are here. If regulations are here or are coming here in some format or the other, we can start investing on the fiat to crypto side and not just stay focused on the crypto to crypto side. So we ended up getting a virtual asset service provider license in the EU. We registered with the FIU in India, built our own payment rails, built our own crypto payout rails. And long story short, today we are sitting in May 24. We are at the start of what looks like another bull run. And over the last few years, regulations have panned out and made a lot of things very clear. Crypto has matured. Technology is at a point where things are becoming better and better and better. There is just more and more global acceptance that crypto is now here to stay. How long will it take to get to where the eventual goal is still unclear. Of course, no one can predict that, but it's here to stay. That's the general purpose accepted thought process. Bitcoin is here to stay for sure. Is the general purpose accepted thought process. And Mudrex is today India's largest investing platform for crypto. We are scaling up globally. We are India's largest on-ramp, off-ramp. So we are one of India's largest fiat to crypto providers. We are India's largest OTC desk. We are regulated. I shouldn't say regulated because regulations are not. We are a registered entity with the FIU in India. We are registered as a VSP in the EU. We are applying for regulatory licenses world over and continuing on that journey of helping people get into crypto as step one and building wealth in crypto as step two, till all crypto technology becomes just better and it becomes much more usable, much more faster. And as I said, we are 3 years away from that.
Amazing. I have a bunch of questions I want to zoom in on. So 22 is when you went retail, India focused retail. That was also the time when you had these two unicorns, CoinSwitch and CoinDCX, and they had so much more money to spend on customer acquisition. How were you competing with them for customers? And the fact that
just by building a better product.
Okay.
Just by building a better product. The CoinSets offering that we have is very unique. It is, and as I said, the only reason why we were able to pull it, again, people think that building an index is easy, but it's actually really hard. It is all the same problems that you would face because what is an index? It is the simplest automated trading strategy that says that at the end of a month, rebalance my coins. Rebalancing is a really hard problem. But we've been able to do it because we had all the pedigree of building out all of this at real scale for a lot of users. It's a very hard problem to solve. We were able to solve it and scale it really well. So that worked out really well. Our product experience was great. And I think it's the way it will pan out also is that, of course, there are these two players, then there is WazirX, there are a bunch of other players. And even today, some of these players still exist, others have shut down or are trying to figure out what to do next. But what we still felt is that all of this is very early. India at that point in 22 maybe had a total of 10-12 million users registered across all platforms. Maybe 4 or 5 million users who had ever purchased crypto. Most of the users who had purchased crypto had an average order value of 400 rupees, which is peanuts. It's nothing, right? And the way at least I see it is that the actual reachable opportunity is maybe 50 million users. Basically, roughly the number of users who are investing in equities. In most countries across the world where crypto has reached some sort of stability, it has far overseeded the equities market simply because it's just much more accessible. As I said, it's an efficiency thing. It's much more accessible, so it'll get to people faster. So,
how is it more accessible? I mean, equity investing is the most accessible product around, has been around for decades. Zero brokerage apps are there.
It is because participants in that ecosystem have built products and infrastructure in the format of how an incumbent will build. Not built for the internet, not built for retail, not built for direct access. And because that infrastructure is extremely competitive, eventually all margins of everyone on that side goes to zero. We are seeing that already, right? Today in India, no broker makes any money on any equity trading. Everyone just makes money on FNO. And that will also go to zero. It's just a race. It's just another cycle. It's a race that will go to zero. Crypto providers had the benefit of starting out in a gray regulatory zone, which meant that they could do a lot of other things that equity players could not do. B, because early on there was less competition, the margins were really good. And as a result, they were able to scale much faster, which is why today Coinbase is actually much larger than any single broker in the US. Like, just take Coinbase, it's the largest brokerage house in the US. Take Binance, it's the largest brokerage house in the world. There is no other equity player in the world that has more users actively trading than Binance does. So it's not a joke. So that's one part. That incumbents have a lot of baggage that they cannot let go of, because of that's how they build the business to onboard newer things. And once newer things are onboarded, they are incentivized to actually just partner with them instead of starting off by themselves, because that's how they've always built business, right? Exchange, a broker would always partner with an exchange, with a depository, and focus on distribution. That's their key edge. They've solved for distribution, they've not solved for everything in the backend. Whereas when an exchange was starting off, they would start off from zero and they would be able to get to users faster because they had higher margins, so they could afford to spend in CAC and they would be able to scale faster. So
okay,
it's the same story again and again. It just repeats out in different formats. Coming back, I think that India...
A couple of more questions. This CoinSet product is real-time balancing or once a month balancing, like the index product?
So we rebalance it once a month as such, because after doing a lot of analysis, actually realized there is no incremental economic benefit to the user of doing it at any faster rate. Because any gains, because
there's so much price change that can happen in a month. I mean, Bitcoin can fall by 40% in a month.
Correct. And who says that doing very active trading makes you money?
Okay.
Price change can happen, but it doesn't make you wealth. There is patience is a virtue that very few people get, especially with trading, right? So although there might be a lot of price change, in the longer run, again, we are saying that it's an index product. As a result of the thought process that someone will invest for months, years, do recurring investments over time. When you're talking about it from this horizon, none of this short-term business matters. We actually ran, as I said, we ran multiple different iterations to understand what will be the best configuration. It does turn out that the best configuration is just rebalance every month. That's it. It really doesn't matter at what day of the month you rebalance. You rebalance on the 5th, you rebalance on the 30th. It really doesn't matter. Just do monthly rebalancing. That's it. That's what the most cost effective, because every transaction also has fees involved, right? So you don't want to burden the user with fees. You want to reduce the overhead of fees. You also want to give them some consistency and stability over time. And you don't want to be too reactive. And again, it's a passive product. Going back, if we start taking a lot of the trading decisions, then it's our responsibility to generate wealth. We are not saying that we are going to be responsible. We are saying that you're investing in the market. The market will help you grow. So you should believe in the market. We are just your custodians and we will help you achieve that. We are a platform that's going to achieve that. So that's the answer.
Understood. And so essentially the index product would be where you would have, let's say, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, a couple of these, which you would decide a weight that 10% on this and 30% on Bitcoin. And these weights would get rebalanced every month. And therefore, the portfolio rebalancing would happen. How would you decide how much weight to give to what? What is the science behind that?
So again, we did a lot of analysis on this. And there was some balance that we were able to come out to. This is typically what every, let's say, mutual fund house does when they launch an index. They create a set of rules. And then those rules are based on some historical performance. You use some optimal set that will come out, but any such optimization is always susceptible to overfitting. So what you do is you then cross-regress it to reduce that overfitting case and then just continue to follow it and continue to just evaluate it at periodic intervals. We've set out those rules in the format of a term sheet and kept it for our users. But yeah, coming back to Mudrex, that CoinSet product was great and is great. A lot of our users use it. But over time, Mudrex has now evolved to a full-fledged investing platform. Like, for example, if you would go to a Grow, you would be able to not only invest in mutual funds, but also buy and sell individual stocks, invest in futures. invest in, let's say, a fixed income, get a loan, and so on and so forth. Right? Today, Grow is for all practical purposes trying to become a bank without being called a bank. And that's, I think, the direction in which most such platforms like Mudrex also will head to. Because what happens is that, and this is again something very interesting that we realized only after speaking to now millions of users. Like Mudrex has 1.5 million users on our platform. We've scaled up really well in India, a very low cost. We are now doing, at that time, if you remember, in 21, I said we were doing about $100,000 in revenue. We are now doing $500,000-$600,000 in revenue. We are a PAT positive business, growing very quickly. So we over time realize that the way when a user thinks, the way they think is, it's not like there are some users who will only put in money in indexes, or some users who will only put in trading, or some users who will only do futures. It's actually never that. What users have is a share of wallet. And when I say share of wallet, they'll say that for some user, 30% will go to an index, 40% will go to actively picking stocks, 20% will go to gold, and that might be me. And for you, it will be something very different. For you, you might be a much more risk-averse person. You might say that, okay, because of FD karna hai. And for you, 70% will be FD, 10% will be gold, and 20% will be mutual funds. And these configurations also change over time. So 5 years ago, the configuration for you would be very different from what your configuration is today. So in reality, so that is one part. Second part is that cost of acquiring any consumer is very high. So if you are building a very special purpose verticalized infrastructure, you will never be able to scale, because it will always be very expensive to acquire customers. And the only way you'll be able to scale is actually if you just build the product and distribute it with platforms. So basically, which means that go to a brokerage house, tell them that this is your product, and get the brokerage house to distribute it. Or if you want to build the distribution layer, then you start offering multiple other things. This is basically what we do today. Today, Mudrex is a full-fledged investing platform. You can invest in coin sets. It's again still our hero product, which is what most people come to the platform for. But that's not the only thing they do. They buy and sell individual tokens. They invest in our fixed income product. And now we're launching futures soon. And hopefully by the time this comes out, our futures product will be live, and users will be using it to invest in futures as well. That's what we are scaling.
There is one. Okay, so I am maybe I have some flawed assumptions here. Now, so like let's take the UPI apps market. Is there really much of a difference between a phone pay, a Paytm, a Google Pay? They are all
correct.
Not
Commoditized
so
product.
Yeah,
commoditized product.
It's about who gave cashbacks first, and some of those things which determine which. I would have assumed a well-capitalized player would win, because this is somewhat similar, like the exchange product, and so I'm still surprised on how you are bigger than the unicorns in this space.
No, so there is a difference. Of course, they are exchanges. From an exchange perspective, they do more trading volume than us. They would probably also have more revenue. But we are one of the only platforms that allows users to do this entire gamut of things. Right? So there is a difference. That's how we are, let's say, that's the difference between, let's say, a Grow and an NSE, or a ICICI Securities and a Zerodha, right? So that's one part. The second part is that the products are not commoditized. That's the difference, right? In a highly regulated environment, the only products that exist are commoditized products. Here we still have the leeway to create products. The product creation space is open, and that helps you acquire new users. And that's where the difference is. And I agree, all of this will get commoditized very quickly. It gets commoditized in maybe a couple of years or so. So maybe the only real window is 2 to 3 years to acquire users, until there is a very large regulatory ban that comes in which case, I should say ban, a very large regulatory intervention comes in, where then there are only regulated entities that can survive, in which case there is another move for much larger players to now take regulatory applications and apply for it.
Okay.
And so that India is coming back to the original argument that I was trying to make. I still think India is a much larger market, and it is still highly under-penetrated. It is true for equities, and it is much more true for crypto. Both of these markets will only grow, and both of these markets and the way these markets will grow will be that they will be dedicated players like Mudrex who only do crypto, and then there will be crypto offerings on everyone. Like I don't see any reason why, let's say 2 to 3 years from now, as crypto becomes more and more mainstream, as the central bank in the country becomes, as all banks and the government and the central bank was much more acceptable to crypto, and we are nearing a clear crypto regulator, I don't see any reason why ICICI Securities will not start offering crypto to their users.
Yeah.
There is no reason why that will not
Or
happen.
ETFs, crypto ETFs, like what US has allowed now, Bitcoin
Correct.
ETFs.
It's just a matter of time. It's because, as I said, all the reason why all of this gets driven is that there are core economic incentives. Those economic incentives on the technology side are of efficiency. On the economic side are users just making more wealth. And the platform's economic incentive is that if user is going to make more wealth over here, means that there is a higher opportunity for margin, which means that that's how you will grow the business, and capitalism will drive this at scale.
Okay. So you said that while the other unicorns are bigger in terms of as an exchange, you have the largest on-ramp, off-ramp. What does that mean? Just help me understand that.
So as I said, right, there is users at the end of the day, how do you invest? You need to go from your bank account to crypto.
Rupee to Bitcoin or USDT or
Rupee to Bitcoin. Now you need to do that on platforms like Mudrex, but you also need to do that on the tons of, let's say, Web3 products or core crypto products. Let's say, for example, someone wants to use a decentralized Web3 application. That decentralized Web3 application also needs somehow the ability to give users to go from bank to crypto, right? It's just like launching an e-commerce company but not having a payment gateway. If you don't have a payment gateway, how will users use it? So that's as crypto evolves, there will be more and more use cases. We are one of the largest because we had to solve for the product and the service experience. We've built out this really well, and we've created a separate product for it. The experience on Mudrex is the best today for any of the users. We have instant deposits, instant withdrawals, UPI-based payments that none of the other players have been able to offer over time. And that's a product that we've commoditized now, offered it to many other companies. And we are India's largest on-ramp, off-ramp. We've built this not only for India, but we built this globally as well. And I see the opportunity.
A good way to
very, very
understand this is to compare it with the payment gateway then. So there are some businesses which require you to pay them via crypto. And for those businesses, you are the payment gateway provider, helping them
the
offer an easy way.
The analogy is correct from one level because we are enabling the purchase over there. We are an intermediary. Right. So that's where the analogy is correct. But everything beyond that is incorrect because a payment gateway is actually just an entity that moves INR from one account to another account. In this case, you're moving INR, converting it to crypto, then moving crypto to another entity. So basically, we are an intermediary against whom the transaction happens. So we're just not just an intermediary in the flow of funds like a payment gateway. We are a new kind of an intermediary, almost the equivalent of a conversion layer from fiat. So kind of like a payment gateway, but not. That's why I'm saying that crypto is never like, there are all these analogies that you can always make. Like crypto is like an asset, it's a commodity, it's a currency, but yet somehow it is none of these, and it's new and unique, and you need to change how you think of this.
Okay, interesting. So I'm assuming that when somebody is using Mudrex to use some other crypto products, so not only is Mudrex doing the fiat to crypto, but Mudrex is also giving them a wallet to store their crypto.
Mudrex is giving them a wallet. Mudrex is doing their KYC AML. Mudrex is the one that's reporting to the government of India and to whichever governments that user is coming in from. And Mudrex is also taking care of taxation and security. So that's that's another layer where it's different from payment gateway. Razorpay just does the intermediary transaction. It doesn't need to care about anything else. But we do need. And that's why building this is also a much harder problem. Building a payment gateway is easier. You just need to, there are some licenses that you need to acquire. There are some tech stack that you need to build, and you need to partner with a bank. Here we have to do that plus everything else, which is again tougher to do.
Okay, very interesting.
By the way, I don't take any pride in solving for hard problems. I actually think that most people should not be solving hard problems. There are a lot of easier problems that people can solve for. But again, the reason why we have to do it is because we are so early. We are in year 7 of what I think is a 20-year journey, and you have to build some of these core infrastructure pieces to open up the market. Because without these, you cannot open up a market. Like the way I think of it is that if you want to compare it with e-commerce, the real invention for e-commerce in India was actually cash on delivery. Cash on delivery
Yes.
is what helped solve for the trust problem, right? That was a real invention. Everything else was just copy paste. And cash on delivery is what helped Flipkart get to be where Flipkart is today. It was not like Flipkart was a winner then. There were maybe way
Yeah.
more capitalized products at that time as compared to Flipkart. There was everyone, including Amazon, Snapdeal, and probably 20 other names that I can't even remember now because they could not solve for that problem and Flipkart did. Right? It solved for
Yeah.
cash on delivery. It solved for it in a way that was beautiful. That solved for the trust problem. That helped people get access to e-commerce, which was just a much more efficient way of doing everything. And matlab, fast forward 7-8 years, Flipkart is India's largest tech company, right? And it's riding this wave of e-commerce, which is barely penetrated in the country. Like 5% of our economic transactions happen in e-commerce. As the internet grows, it will just grow. And as the internet grows, Flipkart will solve for this in other ways, and there will be other players who will try and solve for other problems that will come. So that's the lens. That's the analysis that I want to give. The problem that we have to solve for is similar. We have to solve for like a cash on delivery equivalent problem. That how do you solve for access to your products in a way that it builds trust with the consumer, makes the interface seamless, and helps you offer the quality of service that you want.
Okay, very interesting. What is the work you do for tax? So, what is the tax policy of the government with respect to crypto?
So actually, I think the tax policy of the government is it's actually pretty clear. Basically 3 simple points. One is any gains you make in crypto, you pay 30% tax on it. Second is you don't offset profits with losses. And the third is you pay 1% TDS whenever you convert from crypto to fiat. Those are the 3 legs. And then apart from that, of course, for platforms, whenever we charge a fee, we pay GST. So I'm not adding that over here because that's not the burden on the user. So the burden on the user is pay 30% tax on gains. You can't offset profits with losses. That's, I think, the real pain. Jo chupta hai.
So you're saying that it's not just like you can't offset last year's losses from this year's profit, but it is a blanket statement. No loss can be used.
You do 2 trades. Let's say you buy Bitcoin at 50,000. It goes down to 45,000. You made a loss. Now you sell it. Now you buy it again and it goes up to 60,000. Ideally, what should have happened is कि 50 से 60 का आपको gain पे tax देना पड़ता. But here you have to pay tax from 45 to 60, which is
wow, that's crazy.
Which is I can understand why that's there. Okay.
Why is it there? I can't understand it.
That's the challenge. Again, because I've been here for so long and because we speak to regulators on almost like a daily basis, I understand how tough their job is. Like people don't empathize with regulators enough. See, their job is extremely hard. First, they need to understand this new complex thing that has come up. Then they need to be forward looking to allow businesses like us to exist. But having said that, this is not their mandate. Their mandate is actually to help the average consumer from not getting scammed and them from not losing money. That's their biggest mandate. And doing all of this together is a really hard job. And plus, I mean, people think that, oh, regulator jaldi kyun nahi move karta hai? Why don't they take decisions faster? They really can't, because they can't move at the speed of technology, right? Because, again, it's not just technology that's happening here. As we said, crypto is a social change, it's a political change, it's a mentality shift, right? And all of those things take years. They don't happen in months. So as a result, the regulator also has to operate over a time frame of a few years. And to be honest, I think the regulators in India have done a great job at least setting up a system through which they can understand where this space is going and being still on par with global peers and trying to spearhead this conversation at a global level as well. So coming back, I understand why that rule is, because what the regulator is trying to say that, okay, if you want to participate in it from a long-term wealth creation, which is the argument that everyone is giving, then why do you need to trade? Why do you want to buy and sell too many times? I will not incentivize you from buying and selling too many times. If you want to invest in it, keep holding and make money over time, in which case you are not facing any losses, and in which case a 30% tax is the same tax that you would pay on anything else, right? So I understand where it's coming from, that it is to incentivize the right kind of behavior, incentivize platforms to be built in that way, align users in a format where they don't get scammed, and allow the ecosystem to continue growing and not just stop it altogether. Like, they could have very easily gone and said that, okay, you cannot do it. It was very easy for any regulator or the tax system to be so bad that it could have said that you just cannot do it. And there is no economic incentive for anyone to do it. But that's not what's happened, right? What's happened is a very forward-looking setup where it's that, okay, we've set this up. Now let us monitor and track this for the next couple of years. Anyways, typically, in all fairness, crypto market cycles are actually much shorter. Like equity market cycles are much longer. But with crypto, because everything moves fast and everything is global, everything happens at 3-4 year pace. And 3-4 year pace is nothing from a regulator's lens, right? Like a 2 to 3 year period is a good enough period from where they can understand what happens in these kind of market conditions, what happens in these kind of market conditions, how is the market evolving, how are users improving. And all of this also gives time for there to be a wider educational initiative to go out from platforms like Mudrex, right? To help people understand what are they doing, where are they participating. Like if you remember 2021, 2022, basic narrative was that Bitcoin mein invest karo 300% return milega, right?
Yeah.
That was the basic narrative. Those were what the ads were about. Ki invest in Bitcoin get 300% return, which was, in my opinion, extremely wrong and poorly quoted because it just kind of sort of focuses on greed. It doesn't focus on the fact that why you should invest in crypto. Why is it going to be the next asset class? That's what actually Mudrex spends a lot of time focusing on. Like in fact, we recently did a survey, and maybe Shivani can send the details across to you later from my team. We recently did a survey where from 2022 to 2024 now, people's mentality have changed. Earlier, they were thinking that they want to invest in it from a short-term buying and selling perspective. Now people are thinking of how do I make crypto part of the retirement plan? Like you would not, this was the most surprising response that I got. 45% of responders, and this was not a small number, we surveyed over 10,000 users, not only of Mudrex, but of other platforms as well. 45% of responders said that they want to make crypto a part of their retirement plan. Can you imagine that? Retirement plan. That's so forward.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And that also talks about how people's thinking has changed. And in part, this thinking has changed because also of how the regulatory framework was set up. Right? The fact that this is taxable makes it much more accepted. The fact that it's taxable in a way prevents you from doing short-term transactions and forces you to think of it from a slightly more wider long-term perspective, which that reinforces this belief as to why you should stay in this asset class for much longer. And taxation was step one. Now, last year we had the FIU registration. So FIU is the Financial Intelligence Unit inside India. It's a body whose responsibility is to monitor transactions and identify transactions that are either fraudulent transactions or transactions that are terrorist financing transactions or any kind of suspicious transactions. This is not a body that
anti-money laundering.
Correct. It's basically an anti-money laundering body. This is not an entity that only exists in India. It exists in every large country that is a part of the FATF, the global alliance to make sure that terrorist financing does not happen. So FATF last to last year created rules as a global push to align the world as to how should we monitor crypto and what do we go ahead with. Those global rules need to then be implemented by some entity in India, which is the FIU. So FIU came in and said that, okay, we will do this in a way where India actually leads the front from a lot of other perspectives. And like we were a party, because we were one of the larger players, we were a party to doing these conversations from the start. And as a result, we've now implemented this not only at Mudrex because we had to, but there are about 30-40 other entities that exist. Now, what this also does is it adds another layer of safety. If you go back in 2020, any Tom, Dick, or Harry was starting a crypto company. Anyone would say that, okay, mera bank account le lo, yahan paisa dal do, and then give me crypto, right? Which sows the seed of people getting scammed. That changes, right? Now it's a registration. Everyone can't do it. You need to comply with it. There are some responsibilities that you have as an entity, and there are some things that you need to follow. That raises the bar for legit companies to come in. That also changes the narrative. So there is taxation. Then there is registration. Typically, these are always two precursors to probably a regulation sometime in the future, right? This is how things have evolved in Japan, in Canada, and Australia. It's how things have exactly panned out in Europe, where there was a taxation, then it was followed with a registration for a couple of years, and now there is a MiCA regulation that's come into place that's going to be enforced for some things starting June and for other things starting December. So that's how it's panning out here as well, right? And all of this adds to investor confidence. okay, this is now no longer a scam. RBI in 2018, 2019 was saying that अरे सब scam है, कोई कुछ मत करो. But now the narrative is changing. Okay, it's accepted. Do it with limits. It is risky. No one is saying that it's not risky, including us. Like our tagline, if you you've now changed it, but earlier our tagline on Mudrex used to be that 97% of traders who trade in crypto fail. Do not trade. Invest in the longer run. The only way to really make money is investing in the longer run. So that's how the ecosystem has changed, right? People's mentality have changed. So fast forward, now we are sitting at a place where there are maybe 200 million users in crypto. Worldwide. About 90% of them are retail users. This retail user base is going to go from 200 million to 500 million in the next cycle. So that's the target that we are now looking to go after.
What is your domestic versus global split of revenue?
Our vast majority of our revenue is still domestic. And that's also because we've chose to focus on India as a market, right? Also, it's a capital problem, like to be really honest. If you're going after retail, you need to build brand, you need to build trust. That takes time and money. It can't happen like this. Plus, I think the blessing for all crypto companies that performance marketing doesn't work for us. So we can't put ads on Facebook and Google, which is great.
Right.
Which is great because it really helps build trust in the right way.
It's a leveler. People can't.
It's a leveler, right? Like you can't just buy in. So it's a leveler. So building brand and building trust takes time. We are doing that in one geo. So India, we are focusing on mostly to do that. We will, as we continue to build and get more and more revenue, we'll start reinvesting a lot of this in other geos. We are primarily targeting Europe for this. But then in the meanwhile, our B2B distribution via the on-ramp, off-ramp product continues to scale really well. India, we are the largest. We are now growing and scaling up outside Europe. That is not a capital intensive business. It is actually requires very little capital to grow, but has a lot of scale that helps you build a flywheel that can work and scale really well. So that is what we look to scale. And over the next few years,
give me an example of a B2B partnership, like somebody for whom you are providing the on-ramp, off-ramp.
Yeah. So let's talk about Flipkart. Flipkart, India's largest e-commerce company, wants to launch a crypto product. They've launched a crypto product called as Fire Drops, which is actually it's a great product. Okay, and it's actually a true use case of blockchain, the technology integrated very deeply at the core with a traditional workflow of e-commerce. So let me explain actually what it does, because I actually really like what they've built. Let's say today you buy a phone. Let's say you buy a OnePlus phone. Now OnePlus gives you a token, or let's say a coupon that says that okay, you bought a OnePlus phone, great. Now here is a coupon that I'm giving you for free that gives you, let's say, 3,000 rupees discount on a OnePlus earbud. Now you already have, let's say, AirPods, and you don't really need that earbud. So that coupon is useless to you, but it might be useful to someone else who's looking to buy. So there was no way that you could sell this reward to anyone else except for your friends and family. The best thing that you could do is you could just give it to some friend and say that okay, teko use karna, use kar liya. But there is no organic discovery of it. So what Flipkart thought under their Flipkart Labs product is that they said that why don't we allow issuing these individual rewards on the blockchain? It's a public ledger. And the reason why it's important for it to be a public ledger is because the info needs to be discoverable, both of what the reward is, plus it needs to be discoverable on who owns it, plus the transaction needs to be monitored, because otherwise what someone can do is they can just sell the same reward to many different people and there is no way to verify it in a central manner. And plus it enables and opens up Flipkart to now get a lot of other commerce companies to start publishing their rewards on this open ecosystem and infrastructure. It's a very great use case of the core decentralized nature of blockchain and why it should be used and where it should be used. But the user experience problem still exists, right? Every Flipkart user is not going to create a crypto wallet. Every Flipkart user is not going to do on-ramp, off-ramp. So how do you solve for that seamlessly is what we worked with them on. So we worked with them to power their on-ramp, off-ramp part where user could, using Mudrex, seamlessly deposit INR, purchase USDT, convert that USDT to buy a reward. That reward would be sold by a seller who then gets USDT and has the capability of converting that USDT back to INR. Mudrex takes care of all the compliance, all the taxation, and all of this just works. As I said, it's important for it to just work. The user should not care. It should just work. And their pilot worked really well. They got a couple of million users to try it out, and now they're trying to figure out how to scale this to many more users.
Amazing. This is very cool.
That's one
I had
example.
not heard of. Yeah, I hadn't heard of this. And which chain are they building this on?
They're building it on Polygon. Again, low fees, very fast. So, very clear core promise. You need it to be very fast. You need it to be zero transaction cost. That's what Polygon offers today, and many other chains are trying to solve for it. Mudrex is helping with
Polygon is a layer 1 chain or layer 2?
So Polygon started off as something called as a side chain in an era where Ethereum was focused on side chains. But there are obvious security risks with side chains, which is why side chains don't scale. And what you really want is to move back from a side chain to a layer 2. Polygon is now moving to something called as a ZK rollup. We discussed ZK rollups last time. So Polygon is moving to a ZK rollup. It is that ZK rollup based implementation is still in beta, and hopefully it gets done. And it's going to be one of the other L2s competing with Arbitrum's Optimism, Starknets of the world as a layer 2.
Okay, super cool. And this is such a massive unlock for Mudrex also, the Flipkart collaboration, because distribution. I mean, it gives you massive distribution.
Correct. I mean, as I said, it works both ways, right? Like, of course, on the one hand, it gives a distribution, but it gives Flipkart exactly that word. It's an e-commerce company, but doesn't have a payment gateway. It's also the user experience problem, and that user experience problem is everything, right? So it taps out on both places, and that's what. Now going back to the original thesis that I was saying, everything in the world, every crypto to crypto will get somehow monopolized, mostly in a decentralized platform. All fiat to crypto will be local. All fiat to crypto will be regulated. And there will be a new class of service providers which will end up solving that problem. That's
do you earn in this Flipkart deal? Like, do you make money? What is the way in which, like, I mean, some basis points of the transaction value?
Yeah, it's some basis points on the transaction value. At the end of the day, it does need to make economic sense, right? Like, there's no one doing charity over here. So there needs to be economic sense, and it needs to be a win-win. It can't be so expensive that Flipkart needs to bear the cost. It can't be so expensive that the cost gets offloaded to the user because the consumer will then never buy. So there needs to be a balance that needs to be put in. So we do that in a balanced way. We do that not only with Flipkart, but with many other companies. And that's
who's bearing the cost here of the what you're charging? How is that getting paid? Like, I know in a credit card system, the merchant pays, right? Whatever the credit card.
So it's an interesting use case because Flipkart is not the merchant. Flipkart is a marketplace where there is a seller, there is a buyer. The Flipkart is an intermediary. So
yes,
I'm not sure what the current configuration is, but there is some ways in which this cost is split amongst Flipkart, the seller, and the brand that actually issued the reward. Because actually it's in the incentive of the brand also for more such transactions to happen. Because if someone is buying such a reward, then that's the clear intent of making the purchase later on, right? So it's a very interesting way in which how the ecosystem is. It's truly a 5-sided marketplace. There is Flipkart, the platform. There is the seller. There is the buyer. There is the brand, and then there is Mudrex. Like 5-sided marketplaces are hard, like very hard to build.
Yeah.
Visa or MasterCard is probably the only other 5-sided marketplace that I know that exists that does something very similar. It's a payment. I wouldn't say payment intermediary, but it's basically a transaction efficiency thing that's happening.
Okay, and help me understand the which product contributes how much to your revenue. For example, the CoinSet index product, how much does it contribute to revenue, and how do you monetize each of these?
All of this is growing so fast that all of these numbers keep on changing. But the way, I mean, in reality, all of these are not really different products. These are just different packagings of the core same product. The core same product for Mudrex is that we are a brokerage company. People go from fiat to crypto, or people go from crypto to crypto. We charge some fees over there. That's it. That's what the business is. All of these are just different packagings. All of these are just different distributions. We are a brokerage company. That's what we are.
So if
our money is made from brokerage.
Okay. If I put in 100 rupees to buy USDT, so I will get, like, say 99 rupees worth of USDT, and that 1 rupee will go towards brokerage, and that is how Mudrex earns.
Correct. That's how Mudrex.
Okay. Okay, understood. And same thing, like if there is a crypto to crypto transaction, if I'm buying 100 USDT, I'm spending to buy Bitcoin, I will get Bitcoin worth 99 USDT, just as an example.
Correct.
Okay.
The interesting parts is that there are a lot of economies of scale over here that come into play, right? Like building a brokerage business has a lot of fixed costs but very low variable costs. So once you've
Yes.
gone beyond the fixed costs, and if you figure out a way to scale up your distribution beyond the fixed costs, the incremental costs are very low, and that's all the margin and commissions that you make. So as a result, for this business to be viable for any other player, they need to have a large enough user base, and the distribution solving is the key problem. And we've across our user base and Mudrex, across all our partners for whom we power all of this, across all our institutional clients, uh, this is we've kind of sort of been able to solve this problem in a very elegant, almost like a virtuous cycle way, that the more users that come in, the cheaper becomes our cost of distribution, the lower we are able to make our pricing, and the better it is for everyone, and as a result more users come in. So it's a great flywheel that's come into place, and with flywheels like this, momentum just continues to grow over time.
Okay. What is your fundraise roadmap like? Are you planning to raise more funds for your global expansion? Because global expansion needs money, right, for brand building and.
We will do it. We will do it at some point. But I think right now the focus still needs to be that we need to grow revenue. We need to grow our base in India. We need to still continue to focus on improving the quality of our product and quality of our service. Because again, we've now been doing this for 7 years at Mudrex. I've now been doing this for 10, 11 years across 3 companies. Raising money comes with a time ticker that you need to follow. There is no point in raising capital if you are not going to invest it, and you need to be very clear on where you are going to invest that capital. Unless you are very clear on where you are going to invest that capital, if you raise capital, it's extremely expensive. At the end of the day, I'm giving away what is probably the most expensive thing for me, which is my equity. So it's very expensive. And as a result, if you don't deploy it well, and if you don't have a very clear idea where you are going to deploy it, it's going to be wasteful. It's going to be wasteful for everyone. Like it's going to be wasteful for you. It's going to be wasteful for the investor. It's probably also going to be wasteful for the consumer, because they'll end up coming to you, they'll end up trying you out, and they'll just say, "Yaar, kya bakwas service hai, main to chala raha hu," right? So it's wasteful for everyone in the ecosystem. It doesn't add any value. So I think of it from that perspective, that it's a lever, just like many other levers that as an operator you have, and you need to time it right. You need to have the right pieces in place before you should be able to do it, and otherwise it just doesn't work. It ends up being more of a baggage than a real help, because it comes with certain time limitations that you need to do certain things in, and if you don't have very clear thought of how do you do it, it doesn't work out.
Okay. Who are the role models in the crypto world? So for example, you have, say, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, books written about them. People want to learn how they worked, what they did. People want to hear their stories, or even Elon Musk. So who are similar heroes of the crypto world that people should be following, reading what they're doing, getting influenced by?
A lot of the folks who are building the core technologies, for example, Vitalik is a real role model. I had the opportunity
Who's the brain of Ethereum? I mean, Ethereum is his brainchild.
Correct. So I've had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with him in various different settings, and just the real clarity of thought, the real understanding of how things are evolving, how they will evolve, and how that's the natural progression is I think really good. And I really like there's a guy called as Chris Dixon. He's an investor with A16Z. The thought process that he has as to how this is maximally capitalistic, and how all of this evolves in the future is very interesting. So there are some inspirations that I take from them. I actually think CZ has done a great job at building Binance. It's an extremely hard problem to solve. So just how well they've scaled it, how well they've solved it, how well that entire system works is just remarkable. So they've done a good job. Coinbase has done a good job at doing the same thing in a cautious, very regulatory manner, and now they are taking ahead the banner of pushing the regulatory barriers of getting crypto to be legalized. So like there are some of these companies that you really look up to. That is, okay, yeah, these guys are doing good stuff, and these are the kind of people you want to align yourselves with, and as time progresses, grow the business. Yeah, but as I said, the heroes in crypto are still being written. Their stories are far from finished and still writing.
Okay, let me wrap up with this. What's your advice to young people who are listening to this podcast?
Very early on, people should focus on investing in themselves. Nothing else matters. There is no point in saving an additional 5,000 rupee, 10,000 rupee, putting it in an index fund or a mutual fund. Rather, use that money, go on a trip, spend time with friends, maximize your network, because the real asset that you want to grow is yourself. And all of this has massive compounding benefits, because what you spend time, money, and energy in your 20s gives you an order of magnitude more compounded benefits in your 30s, and so on and so forth. Right? So that's first. If you are investing into something, invest on first first focusing on safety. So basically, buy an insurance. Invest in things that will kind of sort of help you have a safety net, so that you can maximize your time growing yourself and your network and your skills and so on and so forth. So that's what you would want to invest in. Uh, if you are wanting to invest in crypto, now this is generic advice for anyone, not only just young folks, but if you're looking to invest in crypto, start small. This is risky. It is hard for people to understand. It is hard for even someone like me to wrap my head around everything that's going on, considering everything is moving at such large pace. So start small, buy Bitcoin, understand what all of this is, understand why it's important, why it should be a part of your retirement plan, and then slowly and steadily participate in it. The price today does not matter. The price tomorrow does not matter. If you believe in it, if you believe that it's going to be a part of your future, you just want to keep it as a part of your future. And that's what matters. Yeah, basically that's basic. I can go much more specific into many other things. As I said, like apply sunscreen and don't.
Cool. Thank you, Edul. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries, Akshay. Loved it. Great conversation.